Chapter 450. Berserk magical beasts wreaked havoc on every street and every roof. They could easily break through the doors and windows, rushing in and killing everyone. From their vantage point in the sky, they could clearly see the commoners being bitten in the legs and dragged out of their houses helplessly. In just a short time, they would be torn to shreds and devoured. Regardless of gender, age, profession, or commoner, they could only become the simplest form of food when they couldn't stop these magical beasts. Cries, wails, and cries for help filled the entire city. The Devil's Den that came out of the ruins of the city lord's mansion was also filled with dark creatures. Bat-winged devils laughed maniacally in the sky. They were deeply intoxicated by the sight of this blood-soaked city. They commanded the necromancers, dark knights, and skeletons to participate in this bloody feast. This Devil's Den was clearly different. The dead professionals and commoners were infected by the dark energy coming out of the ground. They had completely turned into zombies with bulging veins and bloodshot eyes. The remaining 100,000 soldiers of the Citadel were constantly being pushed back as they fought against the dark creatures and magical beasts. The Beastmasters that caught William's attention were no different from powerless mortals without the protection of the guards. They were constantly dying in the mouths of their tamed magical beasts. When William saw this scene, his heart stirred. He had never expected Cannell to do this. But he knew he had an unavoidable responsibility for the Citadel's current situation. It was his constant pressure that caused the Citadel to fall into a hopeless situation. If exposing Cannell's act of selling the dragon eggs had caused the dragons to slaughter the majority of the Citadel in his previous life, then he wouldn't be too affected. However, the current Citadel wasn't something he wanted to see. It wasn't in his best interest, but it also caused his remaining conscience to waver. His Royal Highness took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "I will bear the consequences of my mistakes. Albert, immediately lead the Dragonblood Legion to participate in the defense mission. Do your best to save as many commoners as possible." What about the Beastmasters? Albert knew why the Overlord had come. It was for those Beastmasters. Right now, the Dragonblood Legion's numbers were too low. If they really joined the rescue mission, it would be like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood with a cup of water. It would be better to focus on rescuing those Beastmasters. William sighed. Save them all. If you see any Beastmasters, save them too. Your Highness, the flag of the Eastern Mercenary Alliance has appeared in the east of the city. A scout reported. Hearing this news, his pupils constricted slightly as he looked at the city wall in the distance. Currently, the eastern wall was filled with professionals from the Mercenary Alliance. Paul Bane was also looking at them. Their eyes met. None of them seemed to have expected such an outcome. Meanwhile, Cannell and Polant were still locked in a fierce battle. The two of them fought from inside the city to outside, but Polant was clearly weaker. He seemed to have fallen into a desperate situation and was about to die. However, this did not cause the two to shift their gazes. However, Paul Bane obviously didn't want to stay here any longer. The moment he released his domain, the wind, fire, and thunder domains covered a radius of thousands of meters. The other two epic professions did the same. Just like that, they retreated with the remaining 20,000 mercenaries. It was obvious. This beast-taming citadel that had turned into a purgatory was no longer his goal. What he wanted to do now was to stop his losses and not go down to the city and cause more losses. William sighed. This was the first time he made a losing deal. It could only be said that he didn't know Cannell well enough. It was his mistake and failure to make such a rash decision. At the same time, a dragon's roar suddenly erupted in the only place in the city where there was no chaos. It shook the entire sky. The endless dragons might pierce through the heaven and earth, causing the massacre in the beast-taming citadel to stop. But unfortunately, after witnessing this scene, the remaining legendary WYRM lost the last bit of confidence he had in Cannell. This was an emerald dragon with scales that looked like emeralds. After he spread his dragon wings that covered the sky, the golden eyes on his ferocious dragon head took a deep look at Cannell, who had turned into a lich. Then, he rose from the ground and left the city without looking back. He turned into a green light and flew into the depths of the magical beast forest. After the legendary dragon left, the celebration in the city resumed. The city's revelry began once again, and the magical beast finally dared to roar without restraint. When Cannell saw the legendary dragon leave, he also let out a tragic lich's howl. This indescribable sound wave was accompanied by countless complicated emotions. The damage it caused many magical beasts and commoners to fall to the ground. Some even bled from their orifices and died on the spot. Chaos. The current beast-taming citadel was an extreme chaos. The magical beasts, dark creatures, Cannell, and Polant were in a civil war. William felt a little sad when he saw this scene, but he didn't feel much regret. What was done was done. The word regret didn't exist in his dictionary. The most important thing now was to end the disaster as soon as possible. Hence, most of the Dragonblood Legion left the city to provide reinforcements. A portion of the Dragonblood Legion rushed to the city center to seize the teleportation hall. They also wanted to see if the teleportation gate could be repaired. That was the only way to get reinforcements. Otherwise, William could only ask Moses to help open up a temporary teleportation formation to send more reinforcements. However, some of the trump cards of the City of Dawn would be exposed to some people. William transformed into a dazzling lightning bolt and charged towards the battlefield where Cannell and Polant were fighting. At that moment, lightning flashed and thunder roared. Streaks of dazzling lightning bolts illuminated the pitch-black night sky. In the next second, bang! Countless lightning bolts bloomed in the sky. Cannell's immortal body suddenly exploded, and his whole body was like a cannonball, smashing into the ground like a meteor. Loud booming sounds echoed, but Cannell had an immortal body. His body recovered instantly, and he charged towards the sky at an even faster speed. But the difference in power between them was too great. He could only be sent flying by William again and again. Both sides clashed violently in the sky. Shockwaves covered the sky and engulfed the forests and buildings within a radius of thousands of meters. They were all destroyed in a short period of time. A true battle between epic-rank powerhouses might not be able to destroy the heavens and the earth, but it would definitely be a piece of cake for them to destroy cities and level mountains. William took a deep look at Cannell. He knew Cannell, who was deserted by his people, wanted to die. Or rather, after William had forced him to become a lich, he had become like this. This was a different path from his previous life. One of them had failed to possess a body, and he had no choice but to become a lich. Although he was disappointed, he could only accept his fate. But now, William had intercepted him. His boundless hope had turned into endless despair. Until now, Cannell still didn't know who had stolen his godly spirit body. He was a tragedy. From the day William targeted him, his life had turned into a tragedy. His entire life was a tragedy. William did not show any mercy. In this dog-eat-dog world, it was not easy for him to preserve his kindness. Kindness? Wait until he became a lord. Chapter 451. William was only able to suppress Cannell, but he was unable to kill him. Poland had half of Cannell's soul in his possession, but Cannell had already taken it back. Both of them had no way to deal with Cannell. Even if they destroyed his body, he would recover quickly. There was only one way to deal with him. Seal him. Poland saw that William's aura was so ferocious that he could suppress Cannell. He immediately shouted, "Suppress him. I have a way to seal him." Seal? This was the worst thing William had ever heard. Sealing an enemy meant that the enemy would become stronger in the future. This was how it was portrayed in movies. William wanted to reject Cannell, but he only said one sentence. It infuriated Cannell. Ignoring William's attacks, Cannell turned around and charged at Polander. William was about to stop him when Cannell took out a soul vessel from his space ring. "You betrayed me, and now you want to seal me?" Cannell roared. "I've finally discovered it. My enemy isn't an outsider. It's a group of traitors like you." Having said that, he stared deeply at William. His green eyes seemed to be tearing up as he said, "You saved my citadel, and we share the same fate. I can understand that you want to take revenge on me, but the Eastern Mercenary Alliance is the one who stole my avatar. Ever since they became one of the 4 neutral factions in the Eastern region, they've been trying to use me as a stepping stone. But remember, Paul Bane of the Eastern Mercenary Alliance took away the innate god and the body that belonged to me. His roar reverberated throughout the sky. Many people who were hiding in the dark obviously didn't know that there was such a piece of news. Many people's eyes lit up. Cannell looked at the bewildered Poland and laughed bitterly. Let's go to hell together. Hell! Hell! Purgatory! His voice reverberated in the sky. Then Cannell hugged Poland and dug his fingers into Poland's back. Then he bit down on Poland's neck. Both of them fell to the ground in a loving manner, and they crashed into many innocent trees. In the next moment, the soul device exploded. Then, Cannell's body exploded, and a green light pierced through a radius of tens of thousands of meters. Everywhere the light passed, the vegetation turned into a wasteland. No, Polander only left behind one last sentence before vanishing into thin air as well. William raised his eyebrows. He hesitated for a while before he said in a deep voice, Cannell, my former friend, believe me, I'll avenge you. Paul Bane is not a son. He stole your god's incarnation. Don't think that he'll live a good life. His voice was equally loud, as if he was speaking to someone else. After that, he walked to the center of the explosion where the green light had yet to dissipate and picked up some corpses, equipment, and spatial rings that were not destroyed by the explosion. After all, I didn't manage to kill any epic class, which is a loss for me. But your corpses are still valuable. His Royal Highness worked hard to collect the pieces of their corpses, but he didn't really want to dig a grave for them. These things were very useful to magic researchers and were very valuable, although he could not directly study the secret of the Lich's immortality. However, scientific research was a process of accumulation. If there was a chance in the future, he would capture a living Lich for research. William returned to the sky and looked at the disaster that was happening in the Beast Castle. He could not help but sigh. I don't have enough epic professionals. Only Old Band and the other myth-ranked elites that I can use are legend rank experts, but Old Band is still in the extreme north. It doesn't make sense that a magical homebody like Moses has 3 enchanters as her subordinates. William could not help but sigh. He had sent the Blood Moon Witch over. The other 2 enchanters had submitted to Moses when she was building the magic tower. It had to be said, the allure of a Grand Magister to a mage profession was simply too strong. At this moment, he received a message from the transmission scroll. The Dragon's Blood Warriors who had killed their way into the teleportation hall told him that the teleportation portal had been destroyed by Cannell. It was impossible to repair it. That was under such circumstances. William pondered for a while and decided to contact Moses. He asked him to open up a temporary teleportation portal for the army of the City of Dawn to come over. He believed that the current situation in the Beast Castle would definitely attract many legendary professionals to observe in secret. But he could not care so much now. Cannell had chosen to commit suicide and shifted his hatred to Paul Bane. This was something that William had not expected. However, his suicide was the reason why William didn't suffer a loss. All he needed to do was save the Citadel. With Cannell dead, wouldn't he be able to recapture the 100,000 soldiers before him? Many beast tamers had perished, but it would be beneficial to keep as many beast tamers as possible. It did not matter that Moses had the power of a space great enchanter. After all, Moses had the power of a space great enchanter. It did not matter if she revealed a few more space great enchanters. She had so many trump cards that the Warlock Sage had been hunting her for more than 10 years. Hence, 10 meters above the center of the Beast Castle, accompanied by a buzzing spatial fluctuation and the gazes of countless people who were in despair, Lin Fan suddenly appeared. A teleportation portal that was 100 meters tall appeared out of thin air. 3 seconds later, the first batch of the Dawn army appeared. There were 3,000 shield bearers. They wore beautiful and exquisite bright silver armor, and the moment they leaped out of the spatial gate, they were like war gods. At the same time, they released dazzling aura and instantly slashed the dark creatures on the ground into a complete mess. The Dawn army continued to increase and expand in all directions. Heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. 100,000 Dawn Army soldiers walked out of the teleportation portal. Accompanied by an unstoppable might, they slaughtered in all directions. The most powerful group was not this group of Dawn Army soldiers. It was the last batch of trolls, which numbered more than 1,000. This group of tall and ferocious trolls wore golden armor and carried huge maces. They were like tanks as they led the Dawn Army towards the Devil's Den in the City Lord's mansion. Without a doubt, the dark creatures could not stop them. This was because there was an epic troll in this army of more than 1,000 trolls. Crazy Groom. This 6-meter-tall giant carried a 3-meter-long legendary mace. He suddenly leaped into the air and crashed into the Devil's Den like a cannonball. While he waved his mace, several devils were smashed into meat paste. How was this possible? There's an epic troll? Many devils were dumbfounded. Roar, a bunch of ignorant fellows. Crazy Groom roared angrily, and his body expanded again. His body was ablaze with flames, and he looked like a fire devil. Many dark creatures that pounced on him fell to the ground. He was unstoppable. This troll was the big guy that William had captured because of the blood fruit. He had legendary bloodline. Trolls with legendary bloodline were extremely rare in the legendary continent. Usually, epic bloodline was the peak of trolls. After Crazy Groom was controlled by William, he had a duel with Bloody Crusher. Bloody Crusher, who had become a dragon blood troll, was no match for Crazy Groom. So Crazy Groom became the leader of the trolls. Once again, he made countless Bloody Crusher cuckold. He cannot resist. It cannot be helped. Bloody Crusher, who was bathed in the blood essence of the fire dragon, was no match for Crazy Groom. He could only be the second leader. However, Crazy Groom was smarter, and he managed to get 2 female trolls out of his way. So, this big guy was William's trump card. He had never used it before. Although trolls could not create a realm and could not fly, when they reached the epic level, their defense, combat power, and jumping ability had undergone great changes. They were like the Hulk. At this moment, Lancelot led the Temple Knights and hurried over on the Pegasus. I'm late? Lancelot looked at the scene. The situation was under control. William glanced at him and said, "I waited for you. I couldn't take advantage of the situation." Chapter 452. With the arrival of the City of Dawn's army and Lancelot's 3,000 Temple Knights, the battle at the Beast Citadel came to an end. No matter how powerful the Devil's Den was, it could not withstand the simultaneous attack of so many fierce people. Many demons walked out arrogantly and ran back to the dark world with their tails between their legs. The dark creatures were chopped to the ground like harvested wheat. The Temple Knights cleared out the dark magic, and the corpses could no longer be turned into zombies. As for the scattered magical beasts, they were all killed and turned into rations that William stored in his space ring. In this siege mission, he obtained some experience points and an instance dungeon crystal. As for the other tools, skills, and endowments, he did not obtain any of them. The damage he caused the candle was not worth mentioning. He could not obtain any benefits from it. This instance dungeon is interesting. The players have to resist the dark magic wave before entering the city to provide reinforcements. They even have to face a lunatic like Cannel. It won't be easy. The corners of William's mouth twitched. If the players wanted to enter this instance dungeon, they would suffer heavy losses in the first wave of dark magic. But there were benefits to the dark magic wave. As long as the players could resist the dark magic wave, they could obtain the teeth, sharp claws, fur, and other materials from the magical beasts. William would let the players try it out. It was good enough that he did not suffer any losses. William and Lancelot stood at the top of the city wall and watched the warriors clearing out the dark creatures in the city. They knew each other, and the corners of their lips curled up. Lancelot patted William's shoulder and said, "It's been a long time. I miss you. Why didn't you visit me after you became an epic professional?" William shrugged. He wanted to take Lancelot's hand away, but he knew that Lancelot had been tortured by the Viscount of Darkness time and time again. So, he allowed Lancelot to seek comfort and said, "I heard that the Viscount of Darkness has been causing trouble for you recently." "Yes. Every time I carry out a mission, I encounter a dark incident. It's related to him. Otherwise, when I carry out a mission, the Viscount of Darkness will cause trouble nearby. That little b asterisk starred. He makes me feel powerless every day. It's hard for me to rest. Lancelot sighed. If he was not so busy and had so many battles, it would be difficult for him to become an epic professional in such a short time. William laughed and said, "Why? Do you want to kill him?" "That's the plan, but I don't know how to kill him." Lancelot nodded heavily. The prince raised his eyebrows. "I don't know either. Just bear with it for now. One of you is the son of light, and the other is the son of darkness. Both of you are born enemies. It won't be easy for you to kill him, even with my help. The son of light. The pressure of this identity is too great. I'm not the son of the god of light. I don't know why they gave me this identity. Come to think of it, I heard Cannell and you talking about Paul Bane snatching his god's avatar from afar. Am I right?" Lancelot asked curiously. Innate divine spirits were incredible and would definitely attract a lot of people's attention. William of Kingdom of Lancelot of Hell. William of Gods of Town. William of Town of Mercenaries of a faction. I have Town of Evil of the of Devils of Army of Alliance. William of Evil of the Kings of the War. I have Town of King Camp of is Alliance. I thought that as his brother, I had the obligation to kill him personally to prevent him from making more mistakes. But I didn't expect him to remember our brotherhood even after he became a lich. He even told me that Paul Bane was the one who forced him to become a lich. I didn't expect him to remember our brotherhood after he became a lich. He told me that Paul Bane was the one who forced him to become a lich. The prince coughed lightly. It seems that Paul Bane snatched away the natural god that he was about to possess, forcing him to become a lich to prolong his life. Oh, no wonder why the Eastern Mercenary Union wants to attack the Beastmaster's citadel. There is such a connection. Speaking of which, your Dawn City's intelligence agents are quite strong. You must have planted quite a few chess pieces in our Radiant Temple, right? Lancelot didn't argue with William. William laughed and said, He, of course not. I'm not that kind of person. Lancelot laughed. He was too lazy to care about these things. The Eastern Mercenary Alliance had nothing to do with him. Whether they snatched away the kingdom of God's body or not, it had nothing to do with him. He just had to report it to the Alliance. But William hoped that Lancelot would report it to the Alliance so that Paul Bane could snatch away the kingdom of God's body. William couldn't help but sigh. Cannell's last move was too amazing. He even thought that Cannell was the reincarnation of Kobe. William thought that no one would say anything about the kingdom of God's body. However, Cannell was determined to die, and before he died, he even threw the blame to Paul Bane. This was simply outrageous. What the hell? I snatched the body of the innate god that he wanted to possess? Paul Bane spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes widened in disbelief. But the spy in the Beast Castle said with certainty, That's right. Not only did Cannell say so, but his brother, the Lord of Dawn, also agreed. F***CK. Cannell is the brother of the Lord of Dawn. I'm screwed. Paul Bane's face was as black as an African's. He really needed some healing information to ease his mood. But his spy opened his eyes wide and asked curiously, My lord, did you really not snatch his kingdom of God's body? Otherwise, why would we attack the Beast Castle last night? I've never seen it before. I don't even know what a kingdom of God looks like. How can I snatch it? Paul Bane was unhappy. He slammed the table and pouted. It was a pity. There was no healing information. Instead, messages kept popping up. Kingdom of God? Did you really catch it? Crown Prince Peter, I'm pressuring you to send me the kingdom of God's body. Brother, you're awesome. You snatched the kingdom of God's body and forced the Beast Castle lord to become a lich. Wow. Can you show me the kingdom of God's body? A deputy commander. I can't even show you. You're too lousy as a legion commander. The Eastern Federation Chamber of Commerce is willing to pay a high price for the kingdom of God's body. The kind without a soul. You can bid. Don't explain. No, I don't have a kingdom of God's body. Paul's roar shook the sky. In the camp at the edge of the magical beast forest, countless mercenaries heard the roar of their legion commander. But in the minds of those with discerning eyes, they would never admit to such a thing, even if they were beaten to death. But it was a pity. They did not hear the extreme bitterness and unwillingness in the roar. Instead, they believed that Paul Bane had a god. 3 days later, because the entire eastern region and even the entire legendary continent had their attention on Paul Bane, William, who was in the Beast Castle, was not in trouble. The reincarnation of a god was not a big deal. Besides sages and a few legendary professionals, no one else knew about it. But it was a kingdom of God's body. In this magical fantasy world, many people had the possession technique. They all wanted to obtain the kingdom of God's body and possess it. Canel was the Beast Castle Lord. He had 10,000 reasons not to become a lich. He had self-destructed in despair. But before he died, he had said that his kingdom of God had been snatched by Paul. There was an 80% chance that he was telling the truth. In addition, the Lord of the City of Dawn, who was Canel's sworn brother, seemed to have personally acknowledged this matter. Even if Paul had another mouth, he would not be able to explain himself. William did not know how Paul would overcome this crisis. This had nothing to do with him. What he had to do now was to calculate the gains and losses. Not a single person from the Dragonblood Legion died, but the Dawn Army lost over 2,000 people. Clearly, the intensity of the battle was not small. William sighed. However, the loss of over 2,000 people was not worth mentioning in front of the rewards. William looked at the list and could not help but smile. The Beast Castle experienced the massacre by the giant dragon. In addition to this riot, the city used to have a population of more than 2 million. Now, there are only 800,000 people left. But those who survived the two massacres are basically beast-catching teams and professionals. The population has decreased greatly, but the quality of the population has increased significantly. Among the 800,000 people, 700,000 are professionals. There are more than 10,000 grandmasters and high-level professionals. There are 80,000 soldiers from the Beast Castle, and many of them are grandmasters and high-level professionals. Of course, the most important thing is the beast tamers. The Beast Castle originally had 50,000 beast tamers, but now there are only 3,000 left. This is a huge loss, but as long as we have them, that will be the greatest harvest. At this time, Knox suddenly came with a middle-aged male beast tamer. William raised his brows and signaled him to speak. "Your Highness, this is the representative chosen by the beast tamers. He wants to talk to you. What's your name?" William's eyes lit up. It was Griffin, one of the future vice lords of the Beast Castle and a beast tamer with a legendary bloodline. However, he was only at the Grandmaster level. Griffin didn't know that the person in front of him had seen through him. He gulped and spoke in a deep voice. "Honorable Lord of Dawn, Your Highness. My name is Griffin, the representative of the beast tamers in the city. How do you plan to deal with us?" William raised his brows. "What do you want to do?" Of course, it's best to leave the Beast Castle and do what we want. Forget it. Continue to train your beasts. You'll get the same treatment as before. Griffin rolled his eyes. Sure enough, no matter what kind of lord the Beast Castle had, they were all beast tamers who wanted to squeeze every last drop of blood out of them. However, William's next words made his impression soar. 20 years. You only need to train the beasts for the city for 20 years. Then, I'll give you your freedom." "Really?" Griffin couldn't believe it. "Yes, William, am a man of my word. I'll let you go, and I'll let you go. Thank you, Your Highness. I wish you all the best in becoming a saint and a god. Your future is boundless." Griffin's eyes flashed with joy as he left in a hurry. He wanted to tell the other beast tamers this good news. Meanwhile, William raised his brows. 20 years? His favorability points are going to explode. You still want to leave? Are you born in the year of the dragon? You must have been dreaming during the day. Chapter 453. The Beast Citadel had been completely occupied. However, most of the buildings in the city had been destroyed. In addition, too many people had died in the past 2 days. It was like the end of the world. William had been in charge of repairing and comforting the people. After all, he was the leader. He had to put on a good front. When the country's president went to the refugee camp, he would gain a lot of goodwill and votes. Moreover, the handsome and attractive Prince William was here. The spies that William had arranged were also pretending to be refugees. They kept shifting the focus of public opinion to the Eastern Mercenary Alliance. Most of the professionals and civilians knew the reason. Paul Bane had stolen the natural god of the Beast Citadel. After forcing Cannel to become a lich, he planned to perish together with the Eastern Mercenary Alliance. That was why he summoned the Devil's Den from the city Lord's Mansion. The civilians of the Beast Citadel were all unlucky. As for the Dawn Army, of course, they were good people who came to rescue them. In fact, this story could not be deceived. But they could not deny that William was handsome. There were more than 900,000 people in total, and they were basically all gathered in the refugee camp. Every day, William would visit them in the morning, at noon, and at night. He didn't live with them, but he ate with them. Their affinity for him skyrocketed. In a short span of half a month, most of the 900,000 people had an increase of 200 points in their goodwill towards him. Among them, there were also some individuals whose favorability points skyrocketed by 800 points the first time they met. William did not understand what they were trying to do. It was fine if there were women among them. But what was the intention of these muscular men? Were they trying to harm William? In the temporarily built city, Lord's Mansion, Albert, the commander of the Dragonblood Legion, walked in arrogantly. He bowed to William and said in a low voice, "Your Highness, the magical beasts in the city have been completely exterminated. The magical beasts outside the city have also been killed. We have seized a total of 230,000 magical beast corpses. We're a space ring of magical beast meat. When we return to the extreme north, distribute it to the soldiers of the Dawn Army who are still fighting." William was looking down at the map of the magical beast forest. "Yes, Your Highness." Albert, the muscular elf, glanced at the map. He did not say anything else. Then he walked away in big strides. Don't ask him why he was so arrogant. He was the leader of the Dragonblood Legion. Was that not enough? So many days had passed. The portal had also been repaired a long time ago. However, there were no teleportation portals connecting to other places for the time being. What the Citadel needed right now was to recuperate, not to let a group of spies come and cause trouble. Furthermore, many factions were unhappy with the fact that the City of Dawn had taken advantage of the situation. Among them, the neutral factions in the eastern region had the greatest reaction. They kept protesting and wanted to chase the City of Dawn back to the southern region. Hence, William decided to seal the teleportation portal. Out of sight, out of mind. He wanted to find time to beat up the southern region's neutral camp. In any case, the greatest pressure was on Paul Bane. He was the one who had snatched the innate god, but now he was at a loss for words. He felt terrible in his heart. I didn't expect the Beast Citadel to be dealt with so quickly and in such a short time. It has only been 3 to 4 months since the game update. Things have progressed much faster than I expected. However, the Beast Citadel's losses were too great, and I didn't get many benefits. It's unexpected. William looked at the map of the magical beast forest and pondered. The magical beast forest in the eastern region was huge. Even though hundreds of thousands of magical beasts had died, it was just a drop in the ocean for the magical beast forest. The magical beast forest occupied a quarter of the eastern region's land area. It had the largest forest area in both the eastern region and the legendary continent. There are many magical beasts, mineral veins, potions, treasures, and even ruins. So, I'm going to shift my attention to the unexcavated ruins and mineral veins. William knew his goal for seizing the Beast Citadel. Other than the most important beast tamers, he wanted to gain a good geographical location in a magical beast forest. The key was to occupy a good geographical location in a magical beast forest. This would not only increase the size of his territory, but would also make it easier for him to excavate unknown mineral veins, magical veins, and so on. "Oh, right. Knock, come in." "Your Highness." William glanced at him and said in a deep voice, "Send some beastmasters to Stormy Island and see if they can tame the magical beasts there. The most important ones are the silverback apes." "Understood, Your Highness." Nock turned around to leave. "Wait, go find Altair from Flaming Dragon Snow Mountain and tell him that it's time to pay the protection fee. Ask him to get me 30,000 beastmen as slaves." The beast citadel needs these hard-working little beastmen. Yes, your highness. The prince narrowed his eyes and said, the silverback apes are not very obedient. Although I have their leader under control, they don't like to leave the island to be used by me. Every time, they have to use a lot of treasures to tempt them. But if I can tame them, it'll be the same as having an army no weaker than the behemoth. These magical beasts from the mythological era have great value. Is it time to have some fun next? William looked at the map that he had taken out from Garnier's space ring seriously. It had to be said, in order to become a god, Garnier was so poor that he only had a few million gold coins and a few tens of thousands of magical stones. Therefore, the most valuable treasure from his spatial ring was this super comprehensive map of the magical beast forest. It marked the living locations of all types of magical beasts within a radius of 1,000 kilometers. By pressing one's hand on a magical beast name, it would also show the magical beast's eating habits, migration routes, and even their personalities and characteristics. What was more important was the map also recorded some discovered mineral veins, magic herbs, and so on. What was this called? A super bright map at the beginning of the game. It was too awesome. As for the map maker, it was naturally the first city lord of the Beast Citadel. Only a legendary figure like him had the ability, opportunity, and time to create such a map. The most important thing is that it not only shows the locations of magical beasts, but also the locations of hundreds of wild great dragons and some super magical beasts. William's eyes lit up when he saw this. What were super magical beasts? They were super creatures comparable to adult great dragons, and the lowest was at the epic level. For example, the Phoenix, the Hydra, the Hundred-Eyed Giant. What was even more awesome was that there was a super large Tauren tribe in the magical beast forest. It was the bloodline of the Tauren ancestor, Taurus. This group of Taurens with the most primitive bloodline occupied the only grassland in the inner part of the magical beast forest. They were the overlords of the forest. This is bad. They don't seem easy to defeat. But looking at the markings on the map, they aren't the only ones. It means that they aren't that powerful. Perhaps I can try. When William saw this magic map, these creatures were located in the deepest part of the magical beast forest, and they were all marked. It was just that they were quite far away. Garnier definitely hadn't been there before, and he didn't dare to go. But he could take a look. But the most important thing now isn't these super creatures. It's the unknown ruins of the temple. William took a deep breath. The first city lord was a little unusual. He had found 3 places that were similar to the ruins of the temple. However, before he could explore it, he disappeared. He could only give this map to his useless son. Even if Garnier knew about the possible ruins of the temple, he didn't have the guts to explore. But William was different. He was Garnier's brother on the surface, so he should carry on his last wish and explore these treasures. The 3 locations that were similar to the ruins of the temple were beside the Hundred-Eyed Giant, one beside the Hydra, and the last one was the sacred land of the super large Tauren tribe. What ruins of the temple are there in the magical beast forest? William recalled his past memories, and his eyes suddenly lit up. It should be the ruins of the beast god temple. But the beast god isn't an animal. He's a god who left behind a druid inheritance. That's right. The ruins of the temple aren't in the sacred land of the Hydra or the Tauren tribe. It should be beside the lair of the Hundred-Eyed Giant. William immediately recalled the opening of the temple. Back then, the Hundred-Eyed Giant wasn't the guardian of the temple. It only treated one of the side halls of the temple as its lair, so it naturally wouldn't allow outsiders to explore it. As for the strength of the Hundred-Eyed Giant, it could be said that it was strong, but it was also a little weak. It could only be said that it had the flesh, defense, and attack power of a legendary magical beast. But in terms of agility, it was not worth mentioning. A ranger like William could kite it to death. Yes, William still remembered that he was a ranger, but also had many advantages. It had many eyes, so no matter how slow it was impossible to sneak an attack on it. But it also had many eyes, which was also one of its weaknesses. Then there was a problem. The Hundred-Eyed Giant. Every time you killed one of its eyes, it would become more violent, and all its attributes would continue to increase. When you turned it into a one-eyed giant, all its attributes would increase by 99%. Its remaining eye would also emit petrifying rays. Whoever was hit by the rays would die. So if you wanted to kill it, you had to kill most of its eyes first, and then at the same time. Otherwise, it would be extremely difficult to kill it. And the 100-eyed giant had another characteristic. Its recovery rate was abnormal. If you retreated this time, when you came back in a few days, the other eyes of the 100-eyed giant would recover again. In general, this was a world boss that was extremely difficult to defeat. No, I can't defeat it alone. William sighed. In the current situation, it was impossible to monopolize the 100-eyed giant. He should gather some companions. Then there's no one else. Just Lancelot and the Little Witch. Thunder God Thor and the rest can go to the side. William raised his eyebrows. No matter what, the three of them were considered protagonist-type NPCs. The Blood Red, which was one of them, so there was no need to distribute the rewards. Lancelot, he was a tool, so there was no need to distribute the rewards. It seemed that the rewards would be monopolized by him. Yes, I can call Sir Imas over. After all, this is the relic of the Beast God. There might be the inheritance of the Beast God. If he can improve further, the City of Dawn will have another strong combat force. After William finished his consideration, he immediately took out a transmission scroll and started to contact the few guys. He asked them to hurry to the Beast Town. Chapter 454. In the far north, the snowstorm never stopped. It often engulfed the sky and land, bringing more suffering to the soldiers on the battlefield. The war between the elves, humans, and orcs was still ongoing. The Orc Empire was holed up within the Black Great Wall and no longer attacked. However, the front line was extended by 100 kilometers and battles of iron and fire were taking place everywhere. Even though they had the absolute advantage of the Great Wall, they still could not gain the upper hand against the joint attacks of the humans and elves. Instead, they were constantly being beaten back. It cannot be helped. The extension of the front line was also a problem. They wanted to focus on defending a position, but the attackers would not let them do as they wished. From the start of the war until now, the devil's dens that suddenly appeared were all destroyed. More than tens of millions of dark creatures became experience bars for the humans, elves, and the Dawn Army. The Orc Empire also lost more than 8 million soldiers. The elves, humans, and the City of Dawn had only lost 350,000 soldiers in battle. The casualty ratio was shocking. It was 1-5. Of course, the key reason was that the Orc Empire had a comprehensive advantage in terms of race, equipment, and resources. It could even be said that if the Orc Empire did not have the geographical advantage, they would have suffered a casualty ratio of 1:10. Recently, the Orc Empire had sent many people to the Orc Empire, but the higher-ups of the Orc Empire were delighted. They seemed to have befriended a natural deity. At this moment, sitting high on the throne, Gert glanced at the crowd of legendary orcs and demons in the palace. He didn't say a word. He just waited quietly for Taylor to come into contact with the natural deity. That was right. The natural deity who had stolen the sacred pulse came a few times. But when he saw that the sacred pulse had been taken away, he became angry. Therefore, he stole things everywhere in the royal city, causing many legendary big shots in the city to be annoyed. But he had the ability to break through space. 2 legendary great enchanters had set a trap, but he still managed to escape easily. Under such circumstances, he had to have a good talk with this little slut. Time passed very slowly. After no less than 3 hours, the legendary fire-attributed warrior, the 7-meter-tall Orc Taylor, disregarding the snowflakes on his sparse hair, hurriedly strode into the palace. He knelt on one knee and reported to Galt, "Your Majesty, in these 3 hours I've confirmed that this guy is definitely an innate god. It wasn't some guy's clone. That was because when I took out 500 kilograms of magical crystals, those magical crystals instantly turned into dust, and all of the magical energy was absorbed by him. His devouring speed was extremely fast. Apart from natural deities, none of us legendary professionals are capable of such an ability. This innate ability to devour magic is unique to natural gods. Even a saint like me can't devour magic so quickly. Also, I recently heard a piece of news that a natural god appeared in the Eastern Domain, but his soul was obliterated. Gert nodded. The Fourth Era was indeed different. After the decline of the mythological era, in the three eras of the giant dragons, the elves, and the humans, there had never been any innate gods. This also meant that this era was more important. Taylor continued, that innate god can't only communicate with his mental power, and his body isn't always glowing. He can transform into a human form. However, he doesn't seem to understand the ways of the world. After seeing me, he kept asking for magical gemstones from me. He even asked us to provide him with 9 sacred veins so that he could break through to the legendary realm. At this point, the other legendary big shots couldn't help but twitch their mouths. As expected of a natural god, he didn't need to train at all. He just needed to keep eating, and the dragon race seemed to be constantly sleeping. The elves let them live long enough. Humans, in any case, it seemed that the older the era, the simpler and cruder the way for those races to become stronger. Of course, there were also side effects of natural gods, which was that the consumption was a bit high. It could even be said that a legendary professional, from the beginner to the legendary realm, could possibly consume the magic of a magical gemstone vein. But it couldn't stop a professional from training for a lifetime, absorbing more of the magic between heaven and earth. And the amount of resources consumed by this innate divine spirit was equivalent to that of 9 innate divine spirits. But after hearing this news, Gert's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but ask, that natural god, how many attributes did he awaken? 2. At first, he was covered in golden lightning, and now it has turned into white lightning. His body seemed to have undergone some kind of mutation, but his aura didn't change much. But according to my feeling, he should have awakened 2 attributes, light and thunder. Taylor rubbed his head. Was there a big difference between 2 attributes and 1 attribute? There were also many professionals who awakened many attributes, but it was very difficult for them to train, and it was very difficult for them to break through. But the other legendary professions more or less understood that this natural god needed so much to break through to the legendary realm, which was obviously related to his awakened dual attributes. So, did that mean that he didn't have to be like orphans like them, who had to be troubled to break through every time? As long as he was given enough magical gemstone veins, he could become a true god all the way, and a dual attribute god at that. If that was the case, then his value would obviously be very different, because professions with multiple attributes could not show too many abilities below the legendary realm. The key being that recovery could not keep up with the output. But after reaching the legendary realm and becoming a saint, one could be used as 2, because the problem of recovering chi and magic would no longer be a restriction. Just like Moses. William once said that after Moses became a great enchanter, she would be invincible among those below the saint level. Because Moses did not have to worry about the problem of consumption. She could use all kinds of forbidden spells at the same time. No matter how powerful one was in the legendary realm, one would not be able to withstand it. Dozens of legendary big shots in the palace could not help but fall into deep thought. This natural god was like a slippery loach, so slippery that even the great enchanter could not control him. Although Gur-Ti was a saint, he was a warrior. Other than the ice seal, his restraining skills were obviously worse than the great enchanters. They could not catch the natural god who had all kinds of spatial escape abilities. The only solution now seemed to be to befriend him. What should we do? If we can befriend a natural god, it will definitely be very profitable. But natural gods don't seem to have any feelings. I feel that if we befriend him, we will suffer a great loss. But we can't set a peerless trap to kill him. Don't forget that he still has a short period of invincibility. In particular, he did not steal anything good. It seems that he is forcing us to hand over the magical or veins. We can use this method to befriend him. If we really kill him, it will be a pity. A legendary devil nodded. That's right. Everyone here can be considered the pillars of the Orc Empire, but who has absolute confidence in becoming a saint? It's better to befriend a natural god who will definitely become a saint. If we can pull him into our camp, his majesty will not be in a difficult position. How could Gert not understand this logic when he saw his subordinates discussing among themselves? But where the hell was he going to get so many magical gemstone veins to support a natural god? Wait, I seem to have made a mistake. Gert was suddenly stunned. He said to Taylor, "Go and contact that natural god. If he trusts me, he will go with me to other continents. I will take him to devour the magical or veins of other continents." Huh? Taylor was obviously stunned. The other legendary devils were also stunned. However, Gert said with a smile, "This era is not like the mythological era. The magical or veins are basically occupied by the major forces. Otherwise, there would be powerful magical beasts guarding them. The natural gods of this era are in a state of starvation ever since they were born. If I dare to rob the Or veins in the legendary continent, it will bring more pressure to the Orc Empire. But if I take him to other continents to raid other Or veins, even if a warlock saint can deduce that it is me, they will not chase me from other continents to the legendary continent just for one or two Or veins. Your Majesty, is it necessary for a natural god?" The high priest of the Orc Empire, Gurdan, was about to fall asleep. However, when he heard this, he could not help but twitch his mouth. "I just worked so hard for the alternate dimension. Can't you let me, the high priest, rest more?" This was because he had to take action when it came to stealing things from other continents. Gert glanced at his younger brother, Gurdan, and said in a deep voice, "You have to work hard. As a space archmage, you should study space. Don't study close combat abilities all day." Gurdan replied with a look of displeasure. If a space archmage did not know close combat, how could he be called a space archmage? At the Beast Castle, William, Lancelot, the Blood Moon Witch, and Serene had gathered. Just as they flew into the sky, William was taken aback. Everyone glanced at him. The latter shook his head and transformed into a bolt of lightning that streaked across the sky. The others were not slow either. Serene was the chief druid of the City of Dawn. He transformed into a huge, flying magical beast. When he spread his wings, he could also reach the speed of sound. However, William, who was in midair, was very hesitant. Gert wanted to bring his avatar to other continents to steal magical stone or veins. TSK. First of all, whether this news was true or not was not worth mentioning. Even if it was true, if they encountered danger along the way, the avatar would obviously throw William away. A warrior-type sage would not be able to control him, but if he encountered a warlock saint, then his avatar would definitely die. If it was false, then he could not go because there would definitely be a space archmage following him. Who knew if the space tunnel would lead him to an alternate dimension filled with traps or to another continent? Even if he had many escape scrolls from Moses, he might give them to the sage for free. Hence, he chose to refuse. At least before he reached the legendary level, William did not want the god's avatar to have close contact with the sage. Negative distance was also not allowed. But Gert raised another condition. Gert would still help him obtain the magical stone or veins. But the god's avatar had to attack the elves and human armies on the battlefield. Of course I agree. Even if I can't fake it, I can still stare at the human empires and beat them up. For the sake of the magical or vein, I have to sell my teammates. I'll sacrifice my own teammates. William agreed to the offer without hesitation. After all, to him, if he could obtain a magical stone or veins, it would be a huge gain. Even if he was exposed, he could turn around and run. If he really used his avatar to infiltrate the Orc Empire, then he would be really awesome. From the beginning, William did not intend to let his avatar appear in the same place as him. He also did not intend to let others associate him with his avatar. He was looking forward to what benefits this avatar could bring him. Chapter 455. The four of them traveled quickly. William did not ride a dragon, as he was afraid of attracting the attention of other giant dragons. Many giant dragons lived alone, and it was not a big deal for other magical beasts and humans to pass by their territory. If a giant dragon passed by, it might cause a war. More importantly, the locations of the giant dragons on the map were densely packed. There were thousands of them. Who knew how many giant dragons were hidden in the magical beast forest? Could the Dragon Valley be in the magical beast forest? William had such thoughts before, but it was not certain. The Dragon Valley should be an alternate dimension, the Nibelungen of the dragon race. If the entrance to the Dragon Valley was here, there would be many giant dragons outside. As time passed, everyone's vision widened. There were very few tall trees around them, as the lair of the hundred-eyed giant was right in front. There was also a beautiful lake nearby. It was blue in color, like a small moon embedded in a sea of green trees. When Lancelot saw this, he smacked his lips. This is the place where the hundred-eyed giant lives. It doesn't look that filthy. Before William could speak, splash! A figure that was nearly 80 meters tall suddenly emerged from the lake, and the blue lake water slid down his body. He did not put down the mace that was made of dragon bones. The hundred-eyed giant untied his simple underwear and peed out a large pool of blue urine. When it splashed on the lake, it felt like a waterfall. Then he shook it skillfully before wrapping his penis with his dragon skin underwear. He said in a muffled voice, "Phew, feels good." When Lancelot saw that big thing, he was almost scared silly. However, what surprised everyone even more was that this big guy actually liked to bathe his own urine. As for the so-called blue lake, it should be the urine that he had accumulated over the years. This was even more ridiculous than troll. But what was more frightening was not the hundred-eyed giant's size and disgusting behavior. On his head, there were 100 eyes that were the size of a fist. These eyes could look in different directions at the same time. If they had not hidden in strange places, they would have been discovered. Then, the hundred-eyed giant did not enter the huge cave in the mountain behind him. He just sat opposite the urine lake, as if he was admiring the beautiful scenery he had created. But as the sun set, dusk fell. Some of the hundred-eyed giant's eyes slowly closed, as if it was sleeping. The blood moon, which did not like to talk. Saramas was only at the Grandmaster level, so he did not have the right to speak. Lancelot took a deep breath and could not help but say, "It would be difficult for you to ambush such a monster. I think he is sleeping now. Half of his eyes are closed, but there are still 50 eyes open." William shrugged his shoulders. "Yes, we can only fight it head-on. Otherwise, why would I have asked you to come? As the Viscount of Light, you have the responsibility to eliminate this evil monster." Lancelot glanced at him. "I still have the obligation to destroy the Dark World, but the key problem is that I'm not strong enough." William coughed dryly. "Hold on. I'm a ranger. My archery skills are very accurate. I'll try to shoot all of his eyes in the shortest time possible." Lancelot was unhappy. "After being with you for so many years, why didn't I know that you were a proper ranger?" But when the prince decisively took out an epic tier apex bow, Lancelot could only keep his mouth shut. All right, William had even taken out such a treasure. He was going to prove his identity as a ranger. But everyone was still a little hesitant. Should they attack now? William had already used his insight. This muscular man was only at the epic level, but his health points were more than 1 million. His eyes were his weak points. Almost every eye would cause real damage to him, and it was the kind that could not be recovered. His health points were very fast, but it was useless against the damage caused by the eyes. But every time he lost an eye, his berserk state would continue to increase. Anyway, the more he fought, the stronger he would become. William took a deep breath and nodded with a heavy tone. "Attack now. There's no need to hesitate. The magic cannon is not very effective against this monster. It's better not to use it." William raised his eyebrows. He had already started to ask his mages to try and see if they could modify the magic cannon into a magic Gatling gun, or they could research the cannonball into armor-piercing bullets. If they succeeded, the magic cannon would not only be limited to a siege weapon, but it would also have more uses. Lancelot glanced at him and placed his hands between his eyebrows. He closed his eyes and prayed. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Several rays of white light shone on his body, making him look like the god of light himself. In the next second, bang! Everyone only saw him flash past, and he was already above the hundred-eyed giant's head. Like a small ant, he slashed at the giant's head with his sword. But the sword energy, which was hundreds of meters long, did not have much effect. Then there was a loud rumble. The magic shield of the white-eyed giant was not broken. This kind of super creature did not differentiate between battle energy and magic, but their bodies could purify the magic of heaven and earth, filling their bodies with endless magic. They did not need to use any methods, and the magic would form an indestructible shield for them. Roar! The hundred-eyed giant sensed that someone was attacking it. It waved its hand and grabbed at the top of its head. Lancelot nimbly dodged the palm. As he flipped his body, he slashed at the giant's magic shield. It buzzed and trembled, and it was about to shatter. Meanwhile, the blood moon, which slowly rose from the forest. When she opened her eyes, countless blood veins spread out from the surface of her body like tens of millions of steel needles, stabbing at the hundred-eyed giant's magic shield at the same time. Bang! The magic shield exploded. But the blood moon, which was not done yet. The remaining blood vessels pierced the magic shield and entered the body of the hundred-eyed giant. At the same time, they started to absorb the blood in the giant's body. It was easy to see that the blood vessels had become thicker. It was as if they were transferring blood for the blood moon, which to devour. At that moment, the blood moon witch's eyes kept turning cold. She obviously did not expect the blood of this big monster to be so full of magic power. If she could directly devour this big monster, her strength would obviously increase to a higher level. William, who was hiding in the darkness, did not want to be left behind. He pulled his bow into a full arc, and 9 arrows shot at the sun. Pom, 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 pom. The 9 arrows were accompanied by sonic booms. They lifted up the dead leaves in the forest and broke many trees. At lightning speed, they hit 9 of the eyes of the hundred-eyed giant. Roar! The hundred-eyed giant roared in pain. The violent sound waves swept in all directions, uprooting the nearby blue lake and trees. Lancelot, who had been pestering him, was also slowed down by the sound wave attack. Bang! The dragonbone mace, which was several meters long, swept horizontally. It hit Lancelot's body and sent him flying thousands of meters away like a cannonball. He did not know how many century-old trees were broken, but he did not need others to worry about him. The place where Lancelot landed suddenly emitted a dazzling white light. The moonlight and starlight in the sky all gathered on the surface of his body, giving him an additional layer of light armor. Just like that, he charged towards the hundred-eyed giant again. What was more important was Lancelot's body was getting bigger with the help of the moonlight and starlight. William raised his eyebrows. Son of Light. Lancelot was called the Son of Light because he had an endowment. It was called the Son of Light. In other words, as long as there was light, he would not completely lose his combat power. He could absorb any light and transform it into his own combat power. It was still nighttime. If it was daytime, Lancelot's combat power would continue to increase. No one knew who Lancelot's biological father was. Those who did not know would think that he was the son of the god of light. You have to use your ultimate skill. It seems like the pressure from the hundred-eyed giant is not weak. William did not dare to slack off. He appeared in the sky, and the surface of his body and the bow in his hand flashed with lightning. He continuously shot out lightning arrows. His figure was like lightning as he constantly flashed around the hundred-eyed giant. Every time he shot an arrow, his figure would instantly appear at the other end. Speed. He was extremely fast. Almost 10 seconds later, the sky was filled with the aftershocks and afterimages of the lightning arrows he shot out. This was the true performance of an epic ranger. Not only was his damage output powerful, but his movement speed was also unimaginable. The hundred-eyed giant was beaten to a pulp by the 3 of them. But it could not be helped. No matter how strong the giant was, it could only receive such treatment when facing 3 NPCs who could be considered as protagonists. Perhaps only the Blood Moon, which was weaker. But her control of blood was much stronger than that of the vampires. Hence, the hundred-eyed giant, who had tons of blood, had weak points all over his body. Once the blood-red threads were released, They would immediately pierce into the giant's body and cause continuous damage. Lancelot's armor of light withstood the repeated attacks from mace. Not only was it not broken, but it became more solid and larger. But when William had shot out 10 of the eyes of the 100-eyed giant, a change occurred. The remaining eyes had all turned blood red. Not only did his body not grow bigger, but it had also shrunk. This meant that he had become more agile. More importantly, although the 10 eyes could not shoot out petrifying rays, they could constantly release mental attacks to inflict mental damage on everyone. Their bodies would also be in a stagnant state. Lancelot's armor of light could withstand physical damage, but it could not withstand mental attacks. He often fell into a trance state. The 100-eyed giant was like a ball. If his armor of light was not strong enough, an epic shield-bearer would have been smashed into meat paste. But then Lancelot roared angrily. His body emitted a dazzling white light that engulfed the area within a radius of thousands of meters. The earth, sky, and forest seemed to be burning at this moment. It was the realm of light. All enemies in the realm of light would be scorched by the light, and their vision would be severely affected. But to everyone's surprise, the 100-eyed giant also had a realm. It was an invisible mental realm. At that moment, thousands of huge, illusory eyes floated in the sky above the realm of light. They gazed at everyone with an indescribable feeling. They constantly shocked, frightened, sad, disappointed, anxious, and other negative buffs. William, kill the last 10 eyes of the 100-eyed giant. Lancelot roared. If he did not have a strong belief in light and justice, he would have collapsed. William's eyes lit up. Here it comes. To kill the 100-eyed giant, the ultimate attack from the remaining 10 eyes would be 100 times better than the first 9 eyes. They could not block the petrifying rays produced by the last eye. The ultimate attack from the 2nd to the 9th eye was also very difficult to deal with. William drew his bow again and shot an arrow. Ghost arrow. Swish. The invisible arrow streaked across the sky and pierced through the white-eyed giant's dragon bone mace. It hit the center of the giant's eyebrows. In the next second, his figure instantly appeared above the 100-eyed giant's head. He also arrived at the center of the battlefield where the two realms overlapped. And in front of William, he was facing the 10 eyes that he had deliberately left behind. The moment both of them stared at each other, countless mental attacks exploded in William's mind at the same time, causing him to bleed from his 7 orifices. But at the same time, William's Eye of Thunder also emitted 2 thick electric currents that hit the center of the 10 eyes of the one-eyed giant. In a short period of time, the electric arcs had spread to the entire body of the 100-eyed giant. And where the Eye of Thunder had hit, the one-eyed giant's eyes were like bubbles that kept exploding. Pom, 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 pom. Howls of agony could be heard continuously. But William endured the mental damage, and the lightning rays in his eyes did not stop. And Lancelot seized the opportunity to control both of the 100-eyed giant's arms. Serene watched from afar. William's eyes shot out 2 bolts of electricity, forcefully hitting the 100-eyed giant. A red hole even appeared on the giant's huge face. What the heck? When the 100-eyed giant fell heavily to the ground, William landed on the ground from the sky. He tightly closed his eyes, and tears flowed out continuously. Obviously, this method of shooting electric currents over a long period of time had put a lot of pressure on him. But fortunately, the 100-eyed giant was still dead. Lancelot hurriedly walked over to support him. But the inhumane Blood Moon, which walked in front of the 100-eyed giant, countless red rays shot out from her body and pierced into the giant's body, continuously absorbing the giant's blood. No matter what kind of creature it was, as long as it died, the magic in its body would gradually disappear. It was not a waste to do this. Serene transformed into a silver-backed ape and ran over on all 4s. He carefully picked up the dragon bone mace that did not match his size and quickly left. William took a long time before he opened his eyes. He glanced at the 2 of them. Lancelot was an outsider, but he still cared about him. Damn it! But when Lancelot saw that William had opened his eyes, he immediately said happily, "It's good that you're not blind. We can't explore the ruins of the temple without your useful eyes." Speaking of which, This is my first time exploring the ruins of the temple. The corners of William's mouth twitched. He thought to himself, has your conscience been eaten by dogs? You're just a tool, and you still want the treasures in the temple? Are you thinking too much? And Serene did not need to inherit the inheritance of the beast god. He could take the dragon bone mace and use it. Chapter 456. As outstanding NPCs, everyone had their own ways of obtaining spoils of war. The blood moon, which could absorb blood to become stronger. Serene kept his dragon bone mace, which was tens of meters long. Lancelot wanted to take the corpse of the hundred-eyed giant, but William was one step ahead of him. He was beaten up for nothing. As the strongest attacker among the four of them, William was undoubtedly the MVP of this battle. Without a doubt, William was the MVP of this battle. Not only did he obtain some experience, but he also obtained a talent. Endowment, Killing Glare. Every time your Eye of Thunder attacks, it will increase by 1800 intelligence x 300% mental damage. Killing Glare. The effect of the endowment is not bad. For professionals of the same level, as long as I shoot long enough, they won't be able to withstand it. William raised his eyebrows. His laser eyes were considered a small killing weapon. The longer it lasted, the more damage it would cause. Now, with the additional continuous mental damage, this small killing move had become a big killing move. This big monster has been dealt with. Is it time to go to the ruins of the temple that you mentioned? Will there be death spirits or other monsters inside? I read in the night novels that there will be terrifying things in these ancient ruins. It should be very exciting. Lancelot was the Viscount of Light, the spokesperson of the Temple of Light, and a super obedient boy. When he entered the cave of the hundred-eyed giant and saw the bare metal walls, he felt that this kind of adventurous life was simply too awesome. His life had reached a climax, and he could not control himself. But after William smacked his lips, he could not help but say, "Brother, you can even defeat the hundred-eyed giant. What kind of death spirit will be terrifying in front of you? Shouldn't they be afraid when they see you? It's good for you to read less night novels. You're the Viscount of Light. Only the evilest Viscount of Darkness in the dark world can be considered your opponent. Don't get too carried away, okay?" "Oh." Lancelot shrugged. He suddenly felt that it was not interesting. It was just the ruins of the temple. The scariest thing would be the living gods. Other existences that would terrify others were not a threat to them at all. As for the popular night novels and mage novels, they were basically written based on the top powerhouses of the legendary continent. But obviously, as a temple knight who believed in light and justice, he had not encountered anything that made him afraid. In short, Lancelot, was much more awesome than the main characters in the night novels. William saw that the hundred-eyed giant was much quieter, so he brought them to the smelly giant's cave. There were many bones of magical beasts inside, but the most shocking thing was the skin of an epic giant dragon. It was covered with dragon scales and seemed to be used by the hundred-eyed giant as its bed. The prince glanced at the dragon skin and dragon scales, which were no longer full of magic power. He did not even have the thought of putting them away. Dragon scales and dragon skin were treasures. But after the death of the dragon, they had to use magic to seal the internal mana or create something. In short, they had to preserve the mana of these things. As for these expired products, they no longer had the use of legendary grade materials. Seeing that the three epic bosses were not interested, Serene chuckled and stuffed it into his space ring. However, in the next second, William used his mental strength to communicate with Roland. "Keep them. I don't need them, but the warriors of the Dawn Army can use them." Sigma, degree. Serene was dumbfounded. Why didn't William take them? He was happy for nothing. William laughed coldly. "Do you think that I'm the only one here? If there were no outsiders, I would have even removed the metal walls of the temple. I asked you to come here because your level is low. You could take away things that I'm too embarrassed to take away." Oh, the descendant of Bayphone was speechless. He knew that Lord William had not asked him to come here to inherit the inheritance. Lancelot and the Blood Moon, which looked up and down, trying to find the entrance to the temple. William had already used his hands as an excavator. Under the shocked gazes of the two, he forcefully dug through the outer wall of the temple that had not decayed for tens of thousands of years. "Brother, everyone says that you have the left hand of God. Have your hands become the left hand of God." When Lancelot saw that William had finished digging the wall, he could not help but hold William's hand and touch it carefully. He felt that there was no difference. It was very elastic. Why was William so ruthless? "Yes, I'm the reincarnation of the Thunder God. Do you believe me?" William retracted his hand and threw a level 1 fireball spell into the temple. The fireball did not last for 3 seconds. It was extinguished. There was insufficient oxygen, but they had seen the situation inside from the outside. William had dug a tunnel, not the main hall of the temple, so they waited here for a short while. After letting the stinky oxygen flow into the temple, they strode in. The Blood Moon, which was a true enchanter. She gently snapped her slender fingers, and several fireballs floated above their heads. They did not dissipate for a long time, and they illuminated the outer tunnel of the temple. This temple was not as well preserved as the Thunder God's temple. The murals inside were not damaged, but the magic lamps on both sides of the tunnel could not be ignited. There was no more magic to maintain the operation of the temple. Moreover, even if William found the door, he did not want to use the magical crystals. The four of them walked along the tunnel. The murals on both sides of the tunnel were of various magical beasts. There were magical beasts from the mythological era, giant dragons, behemoths, and even gigantic sky-devouring whales. Of course, there were many super magical beasts that William and his companions had never seen before. But the most surprising thing was, at the end of the tunnel, there was a carving of the elven world tree. The scene of the world tree blotting out the sun and covering the sky was also carved. There were many elves that looked like small people. They held hands and stood on the leaves of the world tree. They were as small as ants. When Serene saw this scene, he said in surprise, "My lord is right. This should be the ruins of the beast god's temple." In the mythological era, the beast god took good care of the elves and left behind the druid inheritance in the elves. In fact, the druid sect was very popular in the Second Era. Many powerful druids could transform into phoenixes, giant dragons, and other super magical beasts. But after the Darkness invasion, many of the druid sect's experts died, and the inheritance was broken. Now, we can only cultivate to the epic level, but we can't break through again. William patted his shoulder and told him not to be so excited. Actually, William wanted to say that the gods had left many inheritances in the elves, humans, winged people, and orcs. Most of the inheritances were for the sake of gathering faith and becoming stronger. Of course, there were some gods who really liked certain races. But until now, one could clearly see that the sects left behind by the gods had all been uprooted. Professionals were the ranking in this era. The word sect was not popular in the legendary continent. Therefore, the elves could still hear about the druid sect, but the other races had never heard of it. They even thought that the druids were just a race and not a profession. They did not know that the druids were the inheritances left behind by the beast god. Now, there were very few beliefs that were still active in the god's continent. Lancelot glanced at the door and knocked on it with his hand. Then, he gave William a look. His Royal Highness curled his lips and reached out to grab her. Puffed. The door of the temple, which seemed like it could only leave a mark with a sword, was easily broken by William like mud. Swish, swish, swish. In just 3 to 4 seconds, William's hands quickly dug through the entire door. As for the medals that were thrown to the ground, they were naturally kept by Sarimas like treasures with a bitter face. But when everyone entered the door, the scene in front of them made them suck in a cold breath. The collapsed statue of the beast god. The ground was littered with bones of various shapes, and dark red bloodstains had seeped into the metal floor. The surrounding walls were also full of sword marks. On the left and right sides of the door that William had dug through, there were many holes dug out. It seemed that many people were trapped inside and could not walk out. It's like a charaba. What happened here to cause such a massacre? Lancelot curiously stepped on the bones and walked in. He curiously pointed at a dragon skeleton that was tens of meters long. A long sword had been stabbed into the dragon's head. That was the cause of its death. However, What everyone was more curious about was how such a huge dragon had managed to get in. After all, not all WRMS could transform into human form, and not all WRMS liked to transform into human form. But Seraimas seemed to understand something. He could not help but swallow his saliva. Most of the bones of the humanoid corpses belonged to the elves. The bones of the other magical beasts should be the transformed state of the druids. Yeah, won't the druids revert to their original forms after death? William could not help but ask. Yes and no. In the Second Era, when the druids had a complete inheritance, even if they died after transformation, they would not revert to their original forms. After their transformation, they would become stronger. It can even be said that if the druids of that era transformed into a great dragon, they would have the true combat power of a great dragon. Seraimas said bitterly. The elven druids in front of them were unaware of a civil war. It was embarrassing for outsiders to see such a situation. But William was more concerned about what situation could cause the elven druids to kill each other. After all, to make the elves kill each other on a large scale, other than using magic control. The only goal was to become a god. The Blood Moon, which seemed to have seen something. She suddenly pointed. Look, that crystal that is being held up by everyone. William and the others looked over. What was that scene? A few skeletons in human form reached out at the same time. Some skeletons that had transformed into magical beasts also reached out with their mouths or claws. But time seemed to have stopped. Whether it was the druids who wanted to escape or continue fighting, all of them died at that moment. Even their corpses were fixed in place. William's eyes lit up. Could it be a god? You're daydreaming. Lancelot interrupted his fantasy and said in a deep voice, This is obviously an inheritance crystal, and it's a very high-level inheritance crystal. It has a distinguishing function. It records the way to become a sage and a god. William raised his eyebrows and immediately said, Seraimas, go and inherit it. Seraimas was about to nod, but he remembered that this inheritance crystal might be the thing that caused everyone's death. But when he turned his head, he saw that William and the other two had already left the hall. They were holding up countless light shields and looking at him. Damn it. Seraimas clenched his fists and walked towards the inheritance crystal that was held in the hands of countless skeletons. Just as he was about to touch it. Wait. William quickly dug a hole in the ground and called for the other three to enter. He only left a water mirror above to observe whether Seraimas was dead or alive. The corners of Seraimas' mouth twitched. He had never seen such an unreliable lord before. But William had brought Seraimas here for his own good. As for whether Seraimas could obtain the recognition of this special inheritance crystal, it would depend on his own abilities. Seraimas kept swallowing his saliva. The moment his fingers slowly touched the inheritance crystal, boom, an indescribable magical power instantly spread. Countless skeletons in the hall turned into powder. But Seraimas, who was the closest to the inheritance crystal, was not injured. Instead, he slowly floated up. William and the others saw through the water mirror that Seraimas' eyes had turned white. His body seemed to have been completely controlled by the inheritance crystal. Magic runes continuously surged out of the inheritance crystal and entered Seraimas' body. He felt like his body was about to explode. What was even more interesting was those magic runes were like grotesque magical beasts, and they drilled into his body in various postures. It was very short. The inheritance crystal lasted no more than 3 minutes. Seraimas collapsed on the ground that was filled with ashes. But the inheritance crystal did not completely shatter. It was still floating in midair. William and the others did not go out. They quietly watched. Half an hour later, Seraimas slowly opened his eyes. And at this moment, the inheritance crystal completely shattered. A figure glowing with light filled his eyes, just like a god. It appeared in his heart, mind, and body. At the same time, the blood moon, which let out a muffled groan, and the illusory water mirror spell shattered at this moment. William extended his hand to hold the little witch's waist. He was afraid that she would fall to the ground. If she fell and got a concussion, Seraimas would definitely find trouble with him. A god's shadow? Lancelot muttered to himself. The glowing figure that appeared on the water mirror could not be anything other than a god's shadow. After the long-legged, big-breasted which took away William's claws, she nodded solemnly. "Your Highness, this is a conscious beast god shadow. You have to be careful." William raised his eyebrows. "What's there to be afraid of? Don't talk about the means left behind by a dead god. It's not like I haven't seen the living ones." The others did not know why he was so confident, but His Royal Highness was not weak at all. The goddess of magic was his girlfriend, and the thunder god, Thor, was his brother on the surface. He also had the player's interface, so he could clearly feel the change in Saraima's affinity. Even if the beast god had any tricks up his sleeves, it would be useless against him. Moreover, even if the beast god had any sinister tricks, he would not use them on a lord. At most, he would use them on Saraima's. His goal was not the beast god's inheritance, but something else in the temple, something that was hidden deep in his memory. This item had been obtained by an NPC. Now it would belong to him. Chapter 457. The inheritance of the beast god had ended. William and the rest quickly left the cave and walked toward Saraima's, who was still in a daze. After a while, Saraima's came back to his senses. Saraima's looked at William. He seemed to be in a dilemma and could not speak. The prince raised his eyebrows. He did not feel any change in favorability, so he reached out and patted him on the shoulder. "Don't be impatient. Did he cast a curse on you? Or did he use some magic to keep you from talking?" Saraima's hurriedly nodded and blinked. He seemed to be very happy. He did not expect William to be able to guess it right away. William grinned. "That's all there is to it. Did he ask you to complete any missions?" Saraima's blinked and did not dare to speak. He did not even dare to nod. "I got it. After the beast god passed the druid inheritance to you, he asked you to complete a lot of things?" Saraima's blinked once again. "Resurrect him, or find the reincarnation of the beast god?" William suddenly asked. Saraima's was dumbfounded. He was almost blinded. He did not expect William to be so smart. Could it be that William was the reincarnation of the god of wisdom? Lancelot and the Blood Moon, which did not expect William to be able to ask all the important questions in such a short conversation. It was unbelievable. However, the prince sighed and said, "You're leaving?" Saraima's blinked in embarrassment again. "Go. Find the reincarnation of the beast god and return home as soon as possible." William took out 1,000,000 gold coins and 10,000 magical stones and handed them to him. Saraima's, who had just inherited the inheritance of the myriad beast deity, was so touched that his eyeballs almost popped out. He finally said, "Thank you for your kindness, Your Highness. When I return, I will definitely pledge my life to Your Highness." After saying that, Saraima's left the temple without looking back. It seemed that there was a mission waiting for him, and he could not delay it for too long. Lancelot and the Blood Moon, which were confused. Why did William seem to know about it in advance? William could not be bothered. He sighed in his heart. The reincarnation of the beast god? I remember that this fool died in the hands of the god-slaying temple. After the NPC received the inheritance of the beast god, he found the evidence and broke free from his shackles. He even became the new beast god. Oh, the new Emperor Bayphone. The beast god was not the main god in the age of mythology. According to the words of the Deputy Palace Lord of the Light Palace, "I am just an ordinary saint, and my strength is really ordinary." Therefore, the beast deity did not actually place a curse on Saraima's. He was afraid that someone would remove it, so he made a move similar to a wish or a heart demon in a Xianxia novel to strengthen it in the depths of Saraima's soul. If he didn't fulfill this wish, he wouldn't be able to completely forget about this matter. He would be troubled by this matter for the rest of his life. According to normal circumstances, most professionals had this kind of confusion in their hearts. They would definitely not be able to reach the highest realm. Even if this part of the memory was sealed, it would only lead to greater consequences, such as the worst X-Men movie. However, this operation was not guaranteed to be completed. For example, people like Lancelot, who had a strong will, and people like William, who had no sense of shame, these so-called inner demons were useless against them. Inner demons? His Royal Highness wanted to laugh. Even if I become a slug, I won't have an inner demon. So looking at the ashes all over the ground, it was obvious that those shameless people were all dead, or else it was not time for the inheritance crystal to appear. It could only be used in the fourth era. Therefore, those druids who risked their lives for the inheritance ended up with nothing. Some even died here. That's it. Lancelot couldn't help but be stunned. Was the exploration over? William also shook his head. How would I know? But it's obvious that Sorimas has taken away the greatest benefit. Tisk, it's just the inheritance of the beast deity. Even if you give it to me for free, I won't want it. Lancelot twitched his mouth. The Pope had imparted to him the training methods and insights from the beginner to the sage level. But even so, he didn't want it. He only needed to train in the secret manuals. Just the inside side, he had been stuck at the epic level for the past few days. After reading the insights of the Pope, he had a quick breakthrough. There were some rumors in the Temple of Light that the Pope had reached a new realm. It was simple. His backer was too powerful. It was much more powerful than the so-called God's inheritance. His Royal Highness didn't say anything. After all, everyone was different. For example, Lancelot didn't have money. He wasn't as handsome as Lancelot. The Temple of Light only had 2 sages. But the 3 elven tribes had more sages than the Temple of Light. Ahem. Anyway, for people like them who had obtained the inheritance of the beast deity in one step, the inheritance of the beast deity was definitely not attractive to them. But for those ordinary adventurers, for those professionals who had to find a new way to break through every time they reached a new stage, this kind of God's inheritance was definitely as attractive as a divine artifact. Then William looked behind the statue in astonishment. He suddenly said in surprise, "Oh my God, there's still 4 unopened main halls. Let me go and take a look. Wait for a while. I'll go and take a look." Lancelot quickly ran over. The blood moon, which did not dare to lag behind. William glanced at the 2 who had slipped away. Then he scanned the collapsed statue of the beast deity and found the statue's head scattered among the ashes. Swoosh! The thunder slash split the statue's head into 2. Crack! The moment the statue's head split apart. It was as if a divine weapon that had been sealed for a long time had finally seen the light of day. It suddenly emitted the most dazzling light, instantly illuminating the dark hall. It even made people feel that they did not dare to look up to it. Lancelot and the Blood Moon, which stopped in their tracks and looked back. They saw William beaming as he put a colorful necklace into his arms. Instantly, both of their eyes turned green. William was the one who invited them to the temple ruins to search for treasures. Not to mention that we are working for you for free. All the treasures have been taken away by you. And now you're lying to us about our feelings. Damn, Beatrice starred. William ignored the 2 green-eyed monsters. He was pleasantly surprised as he hung the necklace on his neck. Instantly, he felt a vigorous surge of energy entering his body, and his 4-dimensional attributes skyrocketed. The necklace seemed to have become one with him. In a short period of time, it became a tattoo on his neck. Elemental equipment? Rune equipment? But it must be the best. Lancelot asked bitterly. Looking at the current situation, it was a little difficult to snatch the necklace, unless he chopped off William's head. William proudly raised his handsome face and said, "Humph, I'm not telling you." But Lancelot was about to unsheath his sword. He coughed lightly and said, "It's a good item, a divine weapon." Lancelot did not believe him. The corners of William's mouth twitched. "It's up to you to believe me. What divine weapon? You won't let us touch it. Can't we listen to the introduction?" The Blood Moon, which was even more outrageous. She grabbed William's arm and rubbed her meatballs against him. It was very exciting, but William did not like this kind of stimulation. He silently pulled his arm out to prevent the little witch from reporting him to Moses for no reason. So he said mysteriously, "It's a divine weapon of the beast god. Actually, this item is not very useful to the beast god, but the only divine weapon that the beast god can create is this item." What is it? Myriad transformations. It can allow the user to transform into any magical beast, animal, super creature, magical beast, and so on, just like a druid. William pointed at the necklace on his neck. Then he suddenly transformed into a huge, 8-meter-tall berserk ape. He hammered his chest at the two of them. 3 seconds later, he turned into a pure white unicorn with glowing wings. He blinked his long eyelashes and even raised his hooves. Another 3 seconds passed. He transformed into a giant behemoth. He hammered the ground with both hands, and there was a loud rumble. Another 3 seconds passed. He transformed into a small sparrow and flew to the Blood Moon Witch's head to peck. It was as if he was using it as a nest. Next, he transformed into a soft and cute kitten and rubbed against the Blood Moon Witch's chest. The little witch was a little shocked, and she stroked the kitten with all her might. Subsequently, he transformed into a fire dragon that was more than 20 meters long. His body was covered with metal-like scales, and he could even spit out dragon magic. Finally, the prince transformed dozens of times before he returned to his original form. Lancelot and Moses were so jealous that they drooled. Even lemons were not as sour as this. What was a divine weapon? This kind of unimaginable item was a divine weapon. However, William still sighed. The only drawback is that I can transform into any magical beast or animal. Even my essence will change. It can even be said that except for warlock sages, no close combat sages will be able to see through me. But my strength will not change. I'm far from being as powerful as a real druid. Brother, if you don't need it, please give it to me. Lancelot's expression was conflicted. William shrugged and comforted him. Then you're thinking too much. Even if I throw it away, sell it, or crush it, I won't give it to you. Lancelot sat on the ground. He had suffered a huge blow today. He did not want to go treasure hunting with William anymore. Their friendship was over. The Pope was right. William was making things difficult for him. He wanted to go home now. When William saw that both of them had fallen into silence, he ignored them. It was not a big deal to be in a bad mood. As long as there was enough time, they would become angrier. It was not a big deal. Therefore, he delightedly opened the 4 doors of the temple that had not been opened. He looted all the magical stones, crystals, and gems. The beast god was a god that the elves believed in. He had 10 bottles of life potion, 3,000 drops. This was simply another replenishment of his little coffers. His mother was no longer afraid of him seeking death. But Lancelot and William were not blind. They seemed to have sensed something. So, in order to get along well with them in the future, His Royal Highness said that there were 3 bottles of the water of life, 1 for each of us. Therefore, the 2 fellows who had not seen the world happily held a bottle of life potion with 300 drops. They were as happy as 2 idiots. He kept on saying that this was not a loss. This was not a loss. After all, the life potion had the ability to revive the dead. It was a rare item. To ordinary people, it was as precious as a godly weapon. A few drops could save a life. Don't you think this thing is precious? But no matter what, William was the biggest winner in this exploration of the temple. With this godly weapon, it would be of great help to him in obtaining the sapling of the world tree in the future. Then, let's take a look at the precious godly weapon attribute panel. Beast God Necklace, godly weapon, quality, godly weapon position level, none materials, unknown creator, beast god attack power. None power plus 200 physical strength plus 330 agility plus 230 intelligence plus 180 usage restriction. None usage restriction. Drops upon Death Beast transformation. Special effect if the user is a druid after the transformation. All attributes will be increased by 40%. Beast God. Special effect after you transform into any magical beast. You'll have the power of the Beast God. As long as you do not initiate an attack, you will not attract the attention and hatred of any animals, magical beasts, super creatures, or giant dragons. Transformation. Skill you can transform into any magical beast, animal, or super creature that you see. You will have all the aura and life characteristics of the creature. When the transformation is successful, your skills will be transformed into the unique abilities of the creature. Your attack, vitality, and defense will not have any changes. Even if you transform into an ant, you will be an epic ant, skill cooldown, 3-second skill consumption, 200 battle energy points / magic points per second skill duration, unlimited, there were a total of 3 skills. Could it be called a godly weapon? Of course it could. Look at how much the 4-dimensional attributes had increased. Even without mentioning the 4-dimensional attributes, just the super skill of the complete transformation was enough to be called a godly weapon. This is exactly the Monkey King's 72 transformations, the godly weapon for peeping. Ahem, it's a little too much to use for peeping, but it's excellent for moving things. William had only heard of this godly weapon before. Now that he had seen the various skills and attributes of the godly weapon, he could not help but be amazed. Especially after the transformation, the battle energy and magic points consumed were not as fast as his recovery speed. Didn't this mean that he could always transform into some kind of magical beast? He did not know if he could carry on the family line in the form of a beast. This was a big problem. He did not want to try it himself. He would ask Sarimas in the future. But then again, if I really transform into a magical beast, even if only the Warlock Sage can see the truth, it does not mean that the legendary big shots and other sages are idiots. Experts like them all have a very powerful sixth sense, so I definitely can't easily wander around in front of them. William sighed. In fact, his own sixth sense was very strong. If there was an unthreatening animal observing him, even if he did not think that the animal was a person, he would kill it in one move to prevent it from being a method used by some special professionals to spy on him. But no matter what, as long as he had this godly weapon, other than those who had warlock sages or divination grand enchanters, their hometown, even the prince, dared to visit it. Chapter 458. 8 months had passed since the 4 of them overturned the temple ruins. The second magic revival had occurred. The overall magic density of the god's world had increased by 20 times. William did not gain any benefits, and his endowment did not level up. He did not know if his potential had reached its limit, or if he had too many endowments, but more than 80% of the commoners in his territory had beginner and intermediate bloodlines. The City of Dawn, Greenlight City, Stormy Island, East Sea Metropolis, and Beast Citadel were about to usher in the era of universal cultivation. But even if one's bloodline met the requirements, it did not mean that one could practice. Secret manuals, mentors, and money. This was also a problem that these people were facing. As long as no one spread the basic attribute secret manuals, it would be impossible for the entire population to practice. Many commoners and slaves who had worked their entire lives would think that you were harming them even if you allowed them to practice, because they were like cattle and sheep that had been confined for most of their lives. Even if they were allowed to run to the unlimited freedom of nature, they would not be used to it. They might even die because they were not used to it. Furthermore, the professionals who stood at the top would not allow the entire population to practice. They would even deliberately control it to prevent the slaves and commoners from overthrowing them. Of course, the possibility of this happening was almost zero in the gods' world. But it was precisely because the nobles, professionals, and those in power who stood at the same level as them were guarding against it, that they were able to maintain their nobility and power. At most, the number of professionals would increase exponentially, but they would still be divided and controlled by the major powers. So many people would have to work their entire lives in farming, laying floors, building buildings, and doing odd jobs for the rest of their lives. Because these people who did the most basic and tiring work, those in power were often unwilling to let them live a better life and earn more money. After all, if they became rich, the country that had no one to work would become less wealthy. The changes brought about by the magic revival were obvious. This was not a chance for the commoners, slaves, and workers at the bottom level to rise. Instead, it brought more opportunities to the higher-level professionals. The gap between the two parties continued to widen. So life had to continue. The poor became poorer, and the rich became richer. Because the elves and winged people had high bloodlines, their numbers were small, and because they were long-lived races, their situation was better. But the inequality between humans, dwarves, and orcs was especially prominent. But there was no choice. The gods' world was just that realistic. I want to change. Praying to God was the most unreliable method. The gods would still welcome the twilight of the gods. He could only rely on his own practical actions. Read more and try to find ways to increase your knowledge base. Learn to use knowledge to expand your thinking. Sooner or later, you'll be able to find a job that uses your brain power to make money instead of hard work. Let's not talk about that. The professionals who had already started training had their bloodlines improved, and the improvement was much more obvious than when the first mana revival descended. There were countless professions on the continent who took this opportunity to break through. Among them, as long as the professionals who were stuck at the peak for a long time, they would basically succeed in breaking through. Even if some people did not take this opportunity to step into a higher realm, they also saw hope. Many people in the City of Dawn seized this opportunity. Among them, 35,000 had advanced to the master level. A total of 130,000 people took this opportunity to break through to high-order professionals. Until now, there were 50,000 Grandmaster professionals in the City of Dawn. The number of high-level professionals had reached 200,000. There were still 400,000 mid-level trainees who were working hard to carry out mercenary missions or wipe out dark creatures in order to break through. Of course, this number was calculated after taking into account all the professionals in the territory. Burn Cinder, Diablo, Albert, Annie, and Sheehan also made use of this opportunity to step into the epic stage. William had once said that fighting, killing enemies, training, and eating magical beast meat would bring NPCs experience points. Apart from Little Angel Sheehan, all the Grandmasters with legendary bloodlines under his command were fighting in the extreme north. After a year and a half of war, they had killed countless enemies and gained a lot of combat experience. William was not surprised that they could take this opportunity to break through. He even felt that it was a little too little. After all, the current welfare of the City of Dawn was even better than some of the legions of the Empire. But this speed of growth had reached its limit. William was still retiring in the Beastmaster Citadel, basking in the sun all day. But he had no choice. He had to fight on two fronts. Paul Bane had used some unknown method. Crown Prince Peter had invited a Grand Warlock to cast a spell to prove that Paul Bane did not have a god body. Paul Bane, who was the scapegoat, immediately targeted the City of Dawn, or rather, the thriving Beastmaster Citadel. Paul Bane was stubborn and said that William had tricked him. He was simply unreasonable. The handsome prince was too lazy to explain himself. But everyone knew that the elite army under William's command was basically fighting against the Orc Empire in the extreme north. Paul Bane took this opportunity to exert pressure on the Beastmaster Citadel. Either the members of the beast hunting team were killed outside the city, or someone was driving away the magical beasts in the vicinity of the Beastmaster Citadel. There might even be various disturbances in the city. Bang! The knock on the door was very soft. Norton, who was standing at the side, opened the door and said to the messenger outside, "Prince William is asleep. Keep your voice down." "Oh." The messenger nodded in realization. He quickly stuffed the letter into Norton's hand and hurriedly left. I woke up when he walked over. "Who sent the letter? Why didn't you use a transmission scroll?" William yawned and sat up. He casually picked up a teacup and took a sip. It was very fragrant and sweet. Tea leaves had been available for a long time, but they were usually popular among the nobles of the human empires. William didn't have the money or the opportunity to drink it before, so he couldn't refuse this delicacy now. This is the list of information sent by Minister Alec. Norton glanced at the letter and handed it over to William. His Royal Highness took it and sighed as he tore it apart. He glanced at some of the things on it and couldn't help but say, "Paul Bane really doesn't give up. Does he really want to start a siege? I've tolerated his small-scale harassment, but after all, I'm a neutral faction in the southern region. If I suddenly occupy the Beastmaster Citadel, it will definitely put some pressure on the neutral faction in the eastern region. They ganged up to bully me, so I admit defeat." But he set up camp in the magical Beast Forest and gathered 300,000 mercenaries. Does he really think that 300,000 mercenaries can conquer the Beastmaster Citadel? Norton pondered for a moment before replying. "Your Highness, you said that the other neutral factions are also participating. If they insert some Grandmaster legions, even though the numbers won't change, their combat power will be much stronger." "I know." William frowned and nodded. I'm not too worried about the legions formed by the Grandmaster professionals. I'm afraid that he will send a large group of epic professionals. If that happens, I won't be able to hold them off. The elite army of the City of Dawn continued to head to the extreme north to participate in the war. After the Second Magic Revival, William once again sent 50,000 soldiers to the extreme north. All of them were advanced and Grandmaster legions. It was not only to reduce the casualties of the elves, but it was also to increase the combat experience of the Dawn army. He could almost guarantee it, as long as not too many of these legions died in battle. After the rebirth of the extreme north, he dared to beat up the legions of the neutral factions in the eastern region. After all, they were the same level. William's equipment and secret manuals were better than yours. He had 100 times more combat experience than yours. What was he going to do if he didn't beat up the enemy? So William's plan was to delay as long as possible. He wanted to avoid this useless war with the Eastern Mercenary Alliance. But Paul Bane didn't want to give him face. But Paul Bane is still fighting. I'm not afraid of losing. I'm afraid that he can stand up and absorb the experience to defeat the enemy. This is the key reason why Paul Bane's army is almost invincible. He even dared to fight with the god of war for the position of a god. William pondered for a while. Paul Bane's future goal was not to become a sage, but to become a god. He hoped to become the god of war. From now on, he deliberately promoted the bravery of his army in battle. But the chaotic war had not started. But the current situation, no matter how he looked at it, the Lord of the City of Dawn was more like the king of war than him. His Royal Highness was a god-level player who fought wherever he went. He even dared to participate in the war between empires. Did Paul Bane dare to do so? Even if he dared to, he wouldn't have a chance. But this can also be considered a turning point. In his previous life, Paul Bane let Crown Prince Peter play with his Eastern Mercenary Alliance to ruin. From then on, he severed his ties with Crown Prince Peter. Not only did he give up his mercenaries, but he also plunged into the military system of the war-ending empire. That was when he rose to power. Even after Crown Prince Peter became the emperor, he had to rely on this god-level warrior. William pondered for a while. He still didn't want to fight with Paul Bane, not to mention the loss of soldiers. His beast city, which had just been repaired, was attacked by cannons again. There would be countless casualties. The war could be fought, but the winning side had to reap the benefits. D*MN, Paul Bane is really fearless. If he wins, he will earn a lot. If I win, I can't be bothered to take over the city that he built. William sighed, but if the City of Dawn avoided the war, there would be a consequence. The various powers in the eastern region would think that he was a weakling who dared to take advantage of the situation but did not dare to fight head-on. This would greatly affect the reputation of the City of Dawn in the eastern region. It would be very disadvantageous to the situation that William had just started in the eastern region. So what's the key to breaking out of this situation? William was thinking hard. Beep, 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 beep. William picked up his custom-made magic transmission scroll. This thing was like the 5G Huawei of the God's continent. It was very cool. Caesar actually has the time to flirt with me. Isn't he about to fail? William opened it. Caesar's head emerged from the magic transmission scroll. He looked around mysteriously. He could not see anything, and said, "There's no one, right? Someone is asking them to leave. This is your chance." William narrowed his eyes. This was not a video call. Could he finish his sentence in one go? Caesar laughed and said, "Let me tell you a piece of good news. In order to resist the influence of the Magic Conference, the 3 empires of the legendary continent will prevent the talented professionals from joining the 4 major powers. So, they will hold a grand conference." William heard this. Suddenly, he understood. He knew. The epic titled conference of the legendary continent. This was a high-level super martial competition. It was a super conference specially prepared for the epic professionals of the legendary continent. Actually, when people saw the word titled, many people would be confused. What was the difference between legendary, titled legend, epic, and titled epic? It was a real battle record, a record of killing. To have a legendary title one had to kill 3 professionals of the same level. The point here was to kill without anyone's help. It was even more difficult for an epic to kill 5 professionals of the same level. As a result, the number of titled professionals was too small. To be honest, this depended heavily on one's luck. Some specialized in challenging experts of the same level, while some specialized in bullying noobs. Many epic professionals without a title were obviously stronger than those with a title. But their reputation was different. With a title, people would not call you by your real name. It was often called a title. However, the epic titled conference organized by the 3 empires did not allow you to kill professionals of the same level. They were confident that they could protect that person's life. But this also gave the epic professionals a chance to make a name for themselves. Of course, it was definitely not an exaggeration. In the past, if one wanted to obtain a title, the weak would run for their lives while the strong would fight to their deaths. There were many objective factors, but now they would fight to their deaths. Anyway, they would not die. With a title, they would be awesome. Without it, they would be trash. But in this conference, the winner would be the king. If they lost, they would be eliminated. There would be no revival matches. William pondered for a long time. Caesar was still nagging. He said, "The 3 empires' proposal is temporary. The conference has been set up in the empire's territory. As long as you delay, the Eastern Region Mercenary Alliance will not have a chance to attack the B Citadel. Because Paul Bane will definitely participate. I'll see if I can arrange it. I'll let the 2 of you fight. The results will depend on you." William saw Caesar smiling at him and asking him when he would visit him in the city. His Royal Highness decisively turned off the transmission scroll, making his face disappear immediately. This guy was being attacked by his 2 wives and was about to die. If William went, he would definitely be covered in blood. Yes, he was handsome. Perhaps he was really covered in blood. If so, the situation would change from a love triangle to a love triangle. In that case, I can only participate in the conference. William pondered for a while and could not help but feel frustrated. The scale of the Magic Conference was not small. It was divided into 4 regions. Most of the participants were intermediate, advanced, and grandmaster. However, the difficulty of the martial arts competition jointly organized by the 3 empires was obviously much higher. He vaguely remembered the top 10 of the first epic title conference. 8 of them were reincarnations of gods. The top 3 did not have any defeats. It was not that they did not want to fight, but they did not want to fight. The organizers had no choice but to let them tie for first place. The top 3 were Thunder God Thor of the War-Ending Empire, War God Aloth of the Sunset Empire, God of Strength of the Frost Empire class. They were all reincarnations of gods. Including Moses, there were 4 reincarnations of gods in the legendary continent. Tell me, if I am unlucky enough to meet a god, would it be a problem? Yeah, I remember that they met up with Moses some time ago. Can I ask them to go easy on me? Chapter 459. It was impossible to ask someone to throw the match. William did not need to do that. What he had to do now was to prepare for the match. He knew that the first epic title meeting was of great importance. Even without the participation of the 4 neutral powers, it would still be very high. Especially the 2 fellows who were able to kill the reincarnations of the gods. They were extremely powerful. The former was Ekros of the Sunset Empire. He was ranked 4th. The latter was Akolar, the son of the city of Chaos Lord. He was ranked 6th. Ekros seemed like an ordinary wind element magic swordsman, but his control of the wind element was beyond imagination. But his swordsmanship was his strongest ability. In this tournament, he had obtained the title of Wind Devil Swordsman. He was called a sage. As for Akolar, he had mastered the space and time endowments. Before William killed him, he had not advanced to the sage level, but he was also invincible at the legendary level. He was ferocious. Time passed slowly. 7 days later, some of the top forces in the legendary continent had already known about this in advance. In a month's time, the 3 empires would join forces to host the epic title conference. Paul Bane of the Eastern Mercenary Alliance cursed at the timing of the meeting, but he could only retreat because he had to participate in this meeting. After all, he was a title. He could follow someone for a lifetime. Even if he reached the legendary level, he would not have a title. But when he interacted with outsiders, they would continue to call him by his epic title. This was the face of the game. Impressive. So during this period of time, William was frantically trying to recall the epic professionals who had participated in this event, as well as those who were unknown but had become a dark horse. He tried to find out their weaknesses and strengths. He hoped that he could kill 5 of them and obtain a title. What about Paul Bane? He had dual wind and thunder endowments. Both attributes were extremely powerful, especially since he dared to compete with the god of war for the position of a god. His combat power was not weak, but the epic level was not his strongest period. His strongest period was the legendary level. Let's put it this way. Professionals who had more endowment attributes needed to reach a higher level. Only then would they be able to unleash the power of their endowment. Just like the unique gods, they would only be good at one endowment attribute. But as long as they studied the endowment thoroughly, they would not be weaker than professionals who had many endowments. In fact, they would be stronger. Beep, 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 beep. There were only 7 days left before the event. William had already made his preparations. He was about to step into the teleportation portal and head to the royal city of the war-ending empire. Lancelot sent himself a message. He said directly, "Be careful when you participate in the epic title conference. The Pope said that there will be many reincarnated deities at the venue." Thanks. William laughed. They were really good buddies. That's right. Forget it. I'll tell you after you're done. Lancelot hesitated for a moment and didn't finish his sentence. The prince grinned. What are you talking about? Don't you know that I hate people who don't finish their sentences? I thought you were concerned about me. He turned around and stepped into the portal. And after he left, the portal between the Beastmaster Citadel and the war-ending empire was closed once more in order to prevent anyone from causing trouble. As usual, the spatial tunnel did not suddenly collapse. After a short while, William arrived at the imperial city of the war-ending empire. At this moment, there were several people walking out of the teleportation portal every second. Most of them were advanced and grandmaster professionals. They were here to observe the event from a close distance in an attempt to gain some combat experience. It was a pity that they didn't know that the entrance fee was enough to deter many people. But the 3 empires were ruthless. Not only did they sell the entrance fee, but they also used the water mirror technique to broadcast the event. They still managed to earn a large sum of money. In general, they wouldn't suffer any losses. The capital of the war-ending empire was extremely lively. The guards of the imperial city had increased their manpower. Patrolling guards could be seen everywhere. Every district was guarded by a legendary professional. Every street was guarded by an epic professional. If the troublemakers did not have the power of an epic, they wouldn't be able to walk out of a street alive. This undoubtedly proved the power of the human empires. William was the only one from the City of Dawn to participate in the epic title conference. Burn Cinder, Diablo, and the others had just advanced to the epic level. Even if they were to participate, they would be killed. It was better not to participate in the event. Of course, many professionals who had just advanced to the epic level came to participate in this event. One of them wanted to broaden their horizons. The other wanted to be beaten to the point where they could not take care of themselves. Geniuses? There were too many legendary continents and God's continents. Everyone was very confident. Only after being beaten up would they know how weak they were. Royal Highness William, the second prince knows that you're coming, so he sent me to welcome you. Several Grandmaster professionals squatted at the entrance of the teleportation portal hall and hurriedly stopped William, who was looking straight ahead. Why? I know. Can't I go later? William wanted to leave, but the bitter expression on the second prince's face prevented him from doing so. The second prince was afraid that this fearless prince would go around creating trouble. Ever since William had snatched the Beast Castle from Paul, Crown Prince Peter bore a grudge against him. Although he didn't go to the Beast Castle to find trouble with William, every time William came to the Imperial City, he would send some people to find trouble with him. But there were no violent clashes. William just didn't destroy a street. But this was the Imperial City of the war-ending empire. It was already impressive to destroy a building. Caesar had to clean up William's mess every time. Therefore, the second prince had already sent people to block the teleportation portal hall. Once William came out, he would be taken away. William pondered for a while before he left with the two guards with a gloomy expression. When the other guards saw William leaving, they heaved a sigh of relief and turned to leave. They didn't want to find trouble with William. But in the underworld, one had no choice. In Caesar's palace. At this time, many epic professions had gathered. Thunder god Thor wasn't here, but the son of the city lord of chaos, Akarov, was drinking wine and chatting with others. When everyone saw William, they smiled and greeted him. But no one was thick-skinned enough to lick his boots, even if the prince was very handsome. Most importantly, everyone had gathered because of Caesar. Even if they wanted to lick his boots, their target would be the second prince of the war-ending empire, not William. But when Keen Angus, who was also a Thunder Element professional, saw William, he picked up his wine glass and walked over. He smiled and said, "A few months ago, I made use of the second magic revival to successfully advance to the epic level. I'll be participating in this event. When we meet, you have to show mercy." William laughed. "We're both Thunder Element professionals, and you're not weaker than me. It's hard to say who will show mercy." After praising each other, Keen Angus was in a good mood, but he seemed to have thought of something and sighed. Even though we're both Thunder Element professionals, the disparity is still huge." He sat on the sofa and looked at Thunder God Thor. He said in a deep voice, "Actually, the war-ending empire has the intention to hold this event. To some extent, it's because they acknowledge Thor's super strength. Thor will bring glory to the war-ending empire." The corners of William's mouth twitched. Thor was a lord. Even if they didn't become stronger, they wouldn't become weaker. Since the war-ending empire had this thought, so did the Sunset Empire and the Frost Empire. All three empires had seated contestants recognized by the sages. Even in the eyes of the sages, perhaps the reincarnated Lord Thor had already been recognized by the sages. But they had reincarnated into their empires and were born as humans. Their bloodlines were engraved with the identity of the human race. This made some of the sages think that the reincarnated Lord Thor should not attack them. Perhaps the reincarnated Lord Thor could be of help to them. Of course, this had a lot to do with the dominance of the human race as the Lord of the Third Era. They thought that even if the reincarnated Lord Thor was here, as long as they did not reach that level, they wouldn't cause too much trouble. As long as the human race treated them sincerely, they might be able to soften their cold hearts. Not to mention that the gods had no feelings. They were just a little weak. The sages were touched. This was the reason why they made up their minds. "Hey, have you heard? A magical gemstone mine in a big city of the Ice Frost Empire was robbed. An entire mine was uprooted. It's a huge loss," Van Sit said with assurance as he held a glass of red wine in his hand. Cassidon of the Eastern Mercenary Guild smiled. "I know. That guy seems to be a natural god. He's only at the epic level, but he has many escape techniques. In just a short while, he slipped away. Even the great enchanter couldn't stop him." "Yes, I also heard that this guy defected to the Orc Empire in the extreme north and fought on the Black Great Wall. But it seems that he has some concerns. He only seriously injured the enemy and killed very few people." After Keen Angus said this, he even clinked his glass against William's, who was both embarrassed and polite. "Yes, William's elite legion is in the extreme north. He knows the most. Why don't we let the Lord of the City of Dawn tell us?" Someone laughed and pointed at William, who was standing at the side and did not want to speak. William saw that someone finally looked at him. He coughed and said, "You're talking about a natural god. I know quite a lot about him. That guy should have dual endowment of light and thunder. He's very powerful. According to the deduction of the Ice Queen, he should have been born in the Orc Empire. That's why he has some relations with the Orc Empire. The deduction of the Lord of the Extreme North is naturally correct. Did anyone from the Dawn army die in his hands?" William shook his head in surprise. "No, he only attacked twice. Each time, he specially chose the legions of the Frost Empire to beat up. But he killed very few people. I wonder if this natural-born deity would be able to achieve an outstanding result in the title ceremony. Someone mumbled to himself. I'm late. Caesar's voice sounded. He walked over with a smile and said, Now, not only have natural gods appeared in the legendary continent, but there are also signs of natural gods appearing in other continents. But how are your preparations? This meeting is a good opportunity to get a title. Will the second prince participate too? Someone asked. Caesar had also advanced to the epic level with the help of magic. Everyone thought that he would not participate, but he smiled bitterly and nodded. I'm participating for the throne. Everyone's expression changed. Indeed, both the emperor and the prince of the self-defense empire had a strong desire for combat ability. The reason why the emperor of self-defense empire did not have a long lifespan was because he had fought too intensely in his early years. Even though he was a legendary professional, he had many hidden injuries that could not be healed. Then, everyone understood something. That was, if they met Caesar in the meeting, what would they do? Of course, it would be a fake competition. But Caesar seemed to have understood something from everyone's gaze. He said in a deep voice, Don't worry about meeting me. I won't use my brothers to advance. My targets are the princes and top professionals of the other empires. Don't worry. Can the second prince make arrangements? Someone's eyes lit up. Caesar shook his head. I can only arrange for myself to not meet you. As for what the sages will think and what opponents they will arrange for me, I don't know. Yes, I can also let William meet Paul Bane. Everyone looked at the Lord of the City of Dawn. It seemed that the second prince had invested a lot in William. But it had to be said, he was really the savior of Caesar's self-defense empire, if not for the fruit of life. William did not know how long it would take for him to fight for the throne. There were a total of 7 or 8 epic professionals present. They chatted for a while. Caesar called William to the side. They looked at each other, and Caesar sighed. I'm sorry that I can't protect your Beast Command Citadel in the eastern region. I'm in a neutral camp, so you can't interfere directly. But you've helped me a lot. My promise to you still stands. William had promised Caesar that the Beast Command Citadel would give Caesar 6,000 magical beasts every year for free. If Caesar wanted more, he would have to buy more. This was definitely a huge investment. It was worth a lot. Caesar had 6,000 magical beasts every year. It was enough for him to recruit a powerful legion every year. It would give him more say in the succession of the throne. What would William gain? As long as he could gain a foothold in the Eastern region and destroy Paul Bane's Eastern Region Mercenary Alliance, the City of Dawn would dominate the mercenary missions in the Eastern region. This was not a small sum of money. More importantly, if Caesar could inherit the throne, he would gain more benefits in the future. But Caesar and William did not want to talk about this. Caesar hesitated for a while before he said in a deep voice, Some people in the Empire say that you or Thor might be the reincarnation of the Thunder God. Aloys of the Sunset Empire might be the reincarnation of the God of War, and Class of the Frost Empire might be the reincarnation of the God of War. Their strength is not to be underestimated. But it seems that someone will target you in this event. Oh, William raised his eyebrows. He had not provoked any human empires. But when he thought of Peter, both of them looked at each other. They understood. Chapter 460. The conversation between William and Thor was not meant for William to publicize. Some people suspected that William and Thor were the reincarnations of the Thunder God. William already knew about this. It was because the hand of the Thunder God was not a secret to many people. However, His Royal Highness did not expect Kaiser to be so kind as to tell him about the reincarnations of the other 2 main gods. If William did not know, he would be very grateful to Caesar. But from Caesar's tone, William understood that the sages were not sure if they were the reincarnations of the gods. They were still in a state of doubt. It was because they were too strong compared to the professionals of the same level. That was why William had doubts. They could not even tell if the real reincarnation of the Thunder God was William or Thor. Then, Caesar was even more amazing. He immediately removed all the names of the opponents that Peter had arranged for him. Carlet, a veteran grandmaster of combat who isn't too young. Actually, I can't be bothered to tell you about the average grandmaster of combat because you're not a normal ranger. It's fine if you like to use a sword, but I haven't seen you use an arrow before." William wanted to speak. Caesar did not give him a chance to explain. He said bluntly, "The key is that Carlot has spatial endowment. He's a true ranger and mage killer. He entered the epic level 6 years ago and has killed 4 professionals of the same level. He's only 1 step away from becoming a titled professional. He's best at teleportation. He can do it continuously, and his highest number of teleportation is 363 times. But this was recorded 3 years ago. No one knows how strong he is now." William's expression did not change when he heard this news. A grandmaster of combat with spatial abilities. It's a little troublesome, but is there anyone stronger than him? No. Peter's authority is not as strong as before. He can't arrange too many candidates. Moreover, he will be participating in this event. He has arranged many of his epic professionals. This way, the factions in the Empire will think more highly of me." Caesar smiled. He did not know if what William said was true or not, but he could not say bad things about his own investor. William nodded and did not say much. Crown Prince Peter's combat power was not that great, but he still wanted to become an epic titled professional. Obviously, he would make arrangements, but doing so would disappoint many professionals. Of course, as one of the successors of the war-ending empire, he could see the big picture. Even if he did not, the legendary professionals behind him and the sages would allow him to do so. William did not know how he would compensate the epic professionals who had lost to him. 7 days passed. Time passed slowly as they chatted and cultivated. The epic title conference organized by the 3 empires was officially held today. There was no so-called opening ceremony. There was no messy program. The only good thing was that the arena wasn't too far away. It was near the End War Empire's imperial city. William and the rest followed Caesar Zero and flew towards the arena that was like a mountain. They didn't chat along the way, nor did they hear passers-by boasting about some expert coming to participate in the competition. There was no need. Everyone was a genius. Everyone was a genius. Arena and the epic professionals was an arena. And everyone to be. Epic-class professionals obviously wouldn't brag about outsiders. At most, they would brag about each other. They would not. If the arena was an arena, they would not. And the arena, too, and would an arena, and king would to king and would be would. If they were not happy with you, they would kill you. They would not care about anything else. Since they were spectators, they had to be honest. There was no point in gossiping. Other than attracting hatred and getting beaten to death, there was no other way out. Time flew. Thousands of epic professionals had arrived at the huge arena that was suspended in the sky. Originally, the epic professionals were not willing to let others watch their battles. If they won, everyone would be happy. If they lost, it would be embarrassing. But this competition was organized by the 3 empires. With the influence of the epic-titled professionals, many professionals could only tolerate the advanced and grandmaster professionals buying tickets to enter the arena. The 3 empires would not make a loss, but they were only allowed to watch the battles and gain some combat experience. As for the spectators, if they did not mention the contestants, the Imperial Guards would chase them out. Because the dignity of the epic professionals was not something they could insult. Look at the observation platform. There are so many legendary professionals. Keen Angus, who had no influence, was a little excited to see so many experts. When William and the others looked over, there were also people who looked over and gave them an encouraging look. The others did not know the middle-aged man in black armor, so they did not dare to nod. Only Caesar grinned and nodded. He even saluted. Then he said in a low voice, "My father-in-law, the commander of the Imperial Guards, Duke Albright, is in charge of the safety and order of this event. This is a real Empire soldier, the commander of 800,000 Imperial Guards." After William said this, he could not help but raise his eyebrows. The commander of 800,000 Imperial Guards sounded a little awkward. The others obediently flattered him. It cannot be helped. Albright's father was even more impressive. He was an unparalleled battle sage. He was one of the 12 human sages. But the event organized by the 3 empires would not attract the attention of the old man. But Accolot, and Caesar seemed to have a good relationship. He asked in a low voice, "Second Prince, have you seen the battle sage after you got married? My father told me before that the battle sane had done so much for Primal Chaos City. I wonder how he's doing now." Caesar did not hesitate. He immediately said, "Of course I have. My father-in-law is not in seclusion all year round. He just rarely receives visitors. And you don't know, when my father-in-law saw me, he said that I looked like my grandfather." William and the others were shocked. It did not matter if Caesar was speaking the truth. They just had to suck up to him. It could not be helped. They had to be strong. The prince could only be a bootlicker in front of a super successor like Caesar, unless he became a legendary or a supreme figure like a sage. Then Caesar pointed to the 3 observation platforms with the best positions. "The one in the middle is our war-ending empire, the one on the left is the Sunset Empire, and the one on the right is the Frost Empire. My father will not come, but Gregory, the honorary dean of the Magic Academy and the chief warlock sage of the empire, who has the title a Controller of Gold, will attend this event." Vancett frowned. "I heard that Crown Prince Peter is the disciple of this warlock sage. Will he harm you, Prince William?" Caesar's expression changed, and he immediately said in a deep voice, "Don't talk nonsense. Actually, I can arrange some opponents because of this warlock sage. Although he is my brother's teacher, he does not have much hostility towards me." I understand. I said the wrong thing." Vancett knew that he had said the wrong thing. While they were chatting, although there were enchanters who had created a barrier, the power of a warlock sage was unpredictable. It was better to be careful with what they said. However, Caesar did not give Vancett too much face. He still smiled and said, "Besides the chief warlock sage of the empire, there are also many legendary big shots, such as Cabinet Minister Carmen and Foreign Affairs Minister Ranald. As for the Frost Empire, there are no sages. I heard that they wanted to send Kieran Time Enchanter, but he is still in the Snow Elves capital city. He seems to be teaching." The corners of William's mouth twitched. Kieran was like a wolf in a tiger's den. He had been targeted by Queen Bernice, so he could not escape easily. Caesar chuckled and continued saying, "In the end, they chose Stark, who is also known as the Mad General. He is a legendary berserker. He's a ferocious person." Many people gasped and turned to look at William. The prince nodded with lingering fear in his heart. "Yes, just 2 months ago, the army of the Ice Frost Empire suffered too many casualties because of that natural-born deity's attacks twice. He charged into the Black Great Wall and killed an orc legendary expert in the enemy's lair. He was surrounded by 4 legendary experts, but he killed his way out and returned. This is the 4th legendary professional that he has killed. Speaking of which, the cause of this incident was caused by William, but this also gave his avatar a benefit. That was, Gert did not dare to let William continue to attack. He was afraid that the humans and elves would act shamelessly. But the Icebound Sword Sage did not provide him with a magical or vein. William did not know what the old Baldy was thinking. At this point, Caesar finally turned his attention to the Sunset Empire's spectator stand, which had been established the longest, had the longest history, and was the most mysterious. There aren't many people from the Sunset Empire, but you should know 2 of them. The first one is the Sunset Sword, a warrior of the time element, El Yunza. He's also a half-elf. Caesar glanced at William as he spoke. Then he continued saying, "The other is the Death Grand Enchanter, Carl, who is the title of Blood Tide." When the audience heard the names of these 2 people, they could not help but be shocked. Whether it was Sunset Sword or Blood Tide, they were famous legendary professionals at the end of the Second Era. Especially Carl, who had the Blood Tide. He had killed more than 20 legendary professionals at the end of the Second Era, more than many sages. Death Element. This was a very terrifying endowment attribute. Other than being born naturally, it was almost impossible to awaken it by other means. If the God of Darkness was still alive, he would be a demon in many people's hearts. But the reputation of the God of Death, who had died a long time ago, was inherited by the rare death professionals on the continent. If there was a reincarnation of a god that could not be left behind, it was like the God of Death. Even sages were extremely afraid of this endowment attribute. But William looked at the legendary professional who was wearing a black robe and did not reveal his face. He could not help but sigh. In the entire God's continent, he was the first person to reincarnate. This professional had already reincarnated at the end of the Second Era. He had already obtained the recognition of these human sages. No one even suspected him. Chapter 461. The three empires sent out a warlock sage to hold the fort. The other two empires sent out honored legendary experts. The Sunset Empire had sent out two old legendary powerhouses who were highly likely to step into the saint level. One of them was the reincarnation of the Grim Reaper, Carl, who had taken the lives of dozens of legendary powerhouses. He wore a black robe and sat there. His aura did not dissipate, but even the Sunset Empire's own people did not dare to approach him. This was enough to show how terrifying the reputation of the Blood Tide was. After all, the others were only smelling the farts of Carl. On the other hand, the Frost Empire sent a new honored legend powerhouse, who had just killed a legendary orc powerhouse. The three empires were showing off. The epic contestants in the arena did not dare to be careless. They did not dare to be too arrogant either. After all, they were not a match for these big shots. Akarov could not help but laugh. The Empire obviously knows how to hold us back. With them here, who would dare to cause trouble? That's right. William raised his eyebrows. When Lancelot had finished speaking, he had thought that the Viscount of Darkness was going to cause trouble. But looking at the lineup, the Viscount of Darkness would not be able to return. The Empire would definitely treat him with good tea and water. Then, he would be sent to the laboratory of the Warlock Sage's magic tower. He would not have to come out for the rest of his life. He might even enjoy the treatment of immortality. There were more than 10 legendary experts in the arena. When the competition officially started, there would be more than 10 legendary experts. Everyone waited patiently for half an hour. Grigory, the Warlock Sage of the War Empire and the Metal Controller, gently waved his hand, and the arena in midair was instantly sealed. The noisy audience and the contestants immediately quietened down. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. No one dared to show off in front of the Warlock Sage. The old man, who was wearing a purple magical robe, slowly stood up and loudly said, "From now on, the competition officially starts. Those who have not entered the arena do not need to come." Then he looked around and looked at the contestants near the three arenas. He continued, "I hope that all the contestants will use their full strength. There is no need to show mercy. The contestants whose names are called, walk to your respective arenas." 2 short sentences. There were no rules or restrictions. In this kind of arena, you can use all the skills you have, even if you have to throw a ton of Grand Magister scrolls out. This was because the way to obtain an epic title was to fight to the death. There was no holding back. As soon as he said that, some tycoon professionals couldn't help but smile. They had been waiting for this opportunity. William shrugged his shoulders. A great enchanter's forbidden spell was very powerful. However, the power of forbidden spells was never meant to be used in one-on-one battles. It was meant to cause large-scale destruction and damage. Perhaps ordinary epic-class professionals would not be able to resist it, but it was obviously useless against top-notch experts like them. Next, a Grand Magus waved his hand, and a water screen appeared in the sky above the arena. The names of the 3 pairs of contestants were marked on it, as well as the arena they should go to. No one dared to wait for the Great Magister to personally call their names. The contestants all flew to their respective arenas. As the arena's barrier rose, the battle began. William frowned. There are thousands of professionals in 3 arenas. It seems like they will fight for many days. Yes, and we can't go out. Have you made arrangements for the Beast Castle? Caesar asked. William shook his head. It's not a big deal. During the second magic revival, 5 of my subordinates in the extreme north have advanced to the epic level. I have made arrangements for them. 5. Caesar felt a little sad when he heard this. Those were the professionals who fought in the extreme north. They were William's true subordinates. Actually, there were very few epic professionals who relied on a prince like Caesar. Most of them came with the intention of investing in him. Caesar even felt envious of William, but this made him even more determined to rope in William. William met the thunder god Thor again. Thor was not with him because he was mingling with the people from the Battle Energy College. In particular, Thor was very close to a female enchanter. TSK. His legs were quite long. Thor seemed to have sensed something. He turned and glared at William to stop him from looking around. William ignored him and turned to look at the arena. The three pairs of epic professionals who had just entered the arena did not have outstanding combat power. It seemed that they had just broken through with the help of the magic revival. In the eyes of the Grandmaster and advanced professionals, this kind of battle was thrilling and exciting. But to them, it was not interesting. But the boring time passed quickly. One of the battles ended. The fourth match immediately began, and the one who was chosen was none other than Cassidon. It was the nephew of the chairman of the Eastern Region Mercenary Alliance, Cassidon. He was a professional who specialized in both water and fire. He was a warrior and an enchanter. His strength was extraordinary, but his opponent was William's old friend, the reincarnation of the god of wrath, Delosis. When William saw this scene, he sighed and said, "Cassidon is done for. How is that possible? Cassidon is not weak. He can defeat me." Keen Angus was shocked. William glanced at him and wanted to say, "I feel ashamed to be a thunder element professional like you. Delosis, the champion of the Southern Region Magic Conference. Have you fought him before, William?" Caesar frowned. He did not expect Cassidon to be so unlucky. He had encountered the strongest seeded player in the Southern Region. William shook his head and said, "I have not fought him before, but he is not weak. We formed a team to fight a boss." Akeler, who was listening attentively, was stunned. The prince didn't explain. He just said, "As you all know, I encountered the Viscount of Darkness in the Southern Region's Magic Conference. After I killed him, I was exhausted and couldn't continue fighting. That's why I got fourth place." Caesar patted his shoulder to console him. "The Viscount of Darkness is more famous than Delosis. I think you're the champion of the Southern Region Magic Conference." "Yes, that's what everyone says." William laughed. The second prince's mouth twitched. It seemed that he did not need to console William. But everyone was not optimistic about Cassidon's chances of winning. But Cassidon, who was in the arena, performed well. His various fighting styles were remarkable. He specialized in both water and fire elements. In a way, his water element could effectively restrain Delosis's fire element. But Delosis's fire element was too strong. Ever since he became a realm warrior, his control over fire was beyond imagination. Even the flames that Cassidon used would be used by Delosis. Thus, he could only use water skills and magic. At this moment, the arena was covered in mist. Both parties were fighting. No one could see their movements clearly. Accompanied by Cassidon's angry roar, the mist in the sky condensed and formed a huge wave that rushed towards Delosis. The water domain. Delosis's expression did not change. A flaming man walked out from his body. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. With every step the flaming man took, he became taller. After 3 steps, the flaming giant, who was hundreds of meters tall, tore the huge wave with his bare hands. Countless waves swept past the flaming giant, but Delosis, who was standing behind, was unharmed. The flaming giant, who was hundreds of meters tall, was about to stomp on Cassidon, who was vomiting blood. But at this moment, the great enchanter stretched out his hand and took Delosis away with lightning speed. Cassidon was defeated. Everyone was speechless. Delosis did not even release his domain. Obviously, he had not used all his trump cards. But Cassidon was beaten to the point that he could not take care of himself. The gap was too big. When this man came back, his face was dark and gloomy. It seemed that he was too embarrassed to greet them. However, Caesar, a superficial brother, put his arm around his shoulder and comforted him. In any case, Cassidon was not weak. It was just that he was unlucky to encounter such a fierce person. The competition continued. Someone quit. The names of the other 2 people would appear on the water screen. Without the need for the legendary big shot to call their names, they entered the arena. As night approached, more than 60 matches had been fought. This also meant that more than 60 unlucky people were completely eliminated and became spectators. As time went by, night fell. When the moonlight rose, the competition continued. It went on continuously. There was no rest. Or in other words, the higher the realm of the profession, the less time they had to rest. At their realm, as long as they did not deliberately want to sleep, they could maintain a sleepless night for a month. They could use their time to do whatever they wanted. Therefore, in his previous life, players discussed in the forum how long it would take for a saint to have sex with him. However, William did not participate in the competition. But the son of the city lord of chaos, Akeler, who was gifted in both time and space, was lucky enough to participate in the first match. And his opponent, a super meat shield fighter with both metal and earth attributes. When William saw this scene, he could not help but frown. It's uncomfortable for an assassin to be a meat shield. Haha, Akeler is not an assassin. He's a warrior and an enchanter. Caesar laughed. Obviously, no one was worried about Akeler's strength. It could even be said that in this arena, besides the 3 reincarnations of the main gods, Akeler, who had both the space and time endowments, was almost invincible. Even Delosis would be killed if he fought Akeler. But this battle was also very exciting. It was mainly because Akeler's opponent was very resistant. Everyone could only see Akeler constantly teleporting, circling around the fighter until he was dizzy. Even when the fighter released both of his domains at the same time, Akeler was not injured at all. In addition, because Akeler was a time warrior, every time he attacked, he would create an illusion. Akeler used all sorts of methods to accelerate time, causing his opponent's movements to be very slow in his eyes. He was like a stationary target. William's mouth twitched, not to mention anything else. He was not absolutely confident that he could defeat Akeler. Fortunately, they were not enemies. But at this moment, suddenly, the battle in another arena ended, and William's name appeared on the water screen. As for the other arena, he and Caesar looked at each other. Crown Prince Peter's arrangements were very urgent. Carlet, a space fighter. William stepped into the arena. In the blink of an eye. Similarly, Carlet teleported into the arena. William narrowed his eyes. Carlet? Carlet sneered. Lord of the City of Dawn, if you're afraid, just admit defeat. It's not embarrassing. William twitched his lips. He thought to himself, do you think you're Kakarot? If you're really called by this name, regardless of whether you're a scion or not, I promise that I'll leave without looking back. But the difference of one word is like heaven and earth, brother. Chapter 462. Carlot was a veteran epic professional. He was only one person away from the title of epic. Crown Prince Peter wanted him to defeat a random opponent and obtain the title before finding trouble with William. But Carlot was very confident. Or rather, professionals with space and time endowments had an inexplicable sense of confidence. He declared that he would defeat William in the first round. Peter was happy to see this happen. Many of the spectators in the arena had more or less heard of Carlot's name. William was a lord, and he was a professional who had reached the epic level less than a year ago. Naturally, people looked down on him. In many people's eyes, William, as the Lord of the City of Dawn, relied too much on the advantage of the elves. His own combat power was not that high. Fortunately, no one said it out loud. At most, they only thought about it in their hearts. The arena barrier rose. Carlot's figure disappeared. At the same time, William dodged to the left. A pitch-black space crack appeared at his original position, and it did not dissipate for a long time. The prince didn't want to, and couldn't hide his strength too much. He transformed into lightning and disappeared from the battlefield. This was a battle between speed and space. The battle between the two was too fast. There was not much battle energy. Usually, there was only a flash of lightning or a space crack. William's body transformed into lightning, and he maintained the speed of lightning at all times. Carlot stayed in the space tunnel for a long time. He could rush out at any time in an attempt to deal a fatal blow to William. In just 10 seconds, the arena, which had a length and width of 30,000 meters, was filled with thunder and space fluctuations. But many people could not even see their bodies. Only the professions of the same rank could see their figures. Even the weaker epic professions could barely see them. If they went up, they probably wouldn't even be able to dodge. But maintaining the speed seemed to put a lot of pressure on William's body. He only revealed his figure for half a second. Carlot seized the opportunity and leaped out of the space tunnel. He shouted angrily, "Blade of space! Buzz, 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 buzz!" Hundreds of space cracks formed blades that covered a radius of hundreds of meters. They appeared around William in a short period of time, completely cutting off his escape route. The prince's expression did not change. Dozens of light shields surrounded him, and when he rushed out of the spatial rift, the ear-piercing sound of cutting was extremely disgusting. Fortunately, his light shield was strong enough, and the last layer was not broken. However, Carlot disappeared again. It was as if he was living in a different dimension and would not come out. William raised his eyebrows. Space professionals were troublesome in this aspect. They could enter a temporary alternate dimension at any time, which could also be called a space tunnel. It could even be said, it was as if they had entered a higher dimension and were looking at the enemy from God's perspective. They could follow behind the enemy and rush out at any time. He had purposely exposed his weakness just now, but unfortunately, this guy didn't dare to get close to him and could only wear him down from a distance. Coward! The prince cursed inwardly. Whoosh! The space behind him fluctuated once again. William reached out with lightning speed. His 5 fingers turned into lightning, as if he was going to tear the entire space apart. But the enemy was not behind him. This was because more and more spatial fluctuations were appearing around them. William held the saber in his left hand and the saber in his right. Saber energy and lightning continued to bloom. It was futile. All of them were futile. As a space fighter, Carlot had the flexibility of the space element. He had made full use of the interference ability of the space element. He made William continuously use up his battle energy, and he was in a passive state. After a full 10 seconds, he finally appeared above William's head. That weak spatial fluctuation wasn't even as strong as the aftermath of the spatial fluctuation he had just caused. But William suddenly raised his head. Buzz! His eyes suddenly emitted 2 rays of dense lightning. Like 2 continuous laser cannons, they hit Carlot's chest, and he was sent flying hundreds of meters into the sky. But William's eyes could only discharge electricity for 1 second. He blinked. When he used his laser eyes to pierce through Carlot's battle energy shield, Carlot's body disappeared again. Not bad. I was just testing your strength. Carlot's voice reverberated in the arena. His voice was everywhere, and no one could tell where he was. William smiled disdainfully. Come, let me see the strength of a martial artist. You're playing hide-and-seek with a ranger like me. Don't call yourself a fighter. Call yourself a hide-and-seek fighter. Someone in the arena suddenly laughed. No one paid any attention to him. In this situation, besides the legendary experts, only the contestants dared to laugh. Carlot's face darkened, and he stopped mocking William. In the past, he would have punched William, but the opponent in front of him was different. Basically, as long as he had some information about William, he would know that William's hands seemed to have unparalleled strength and hardness. During the Southern Region Magic Conference, William had been given the nickname of the Tearing Hand Devil. It was obvious that many people were traumatized by his hands. But Carlot had his own tactics against William. In the next second, there was an intense, buzzing sound. Boom! The space within a radius of thousands of meters vibrated. Space domain. As the violent spatial fluctuations spread out, a large amount of energy was released. The sky within the domain seemed to have changed. William could not even see the outside world. It was as if he had been pulled into a different dimension. At this moment, 7 or 8 negative buffs appeared on his body. His speed decreased, his perception of space became weaker, and so on. To a normal person, this would be fatal. Carlot appeared in the sky and sneered. Let's see how you're going to dodge this time. He took a deep breath, and his battle energy surged out. Swish, swish, swish. Countless spatial cracks appeared from all directions. They crashed towards William like a torrential downpour. There was no way to dodge. But a ghost arrow pierced through space and silently hit Carlot. Not only did it penetrate his battle energy shield, but it also hit his chest. Countless electric currents surged out of his body. His body stiffened. William transformed into the body of holy thunder. He dodged the spatial cracks and instantly appeared in front of Carlotte. Thunder, sword energy that was like a full moon, slashed down with the power to split mountains. Aha! Carlotte tilted his head, but his shoulder was still hit. He screamed in pain and fell to the ground. The lightning on the surface of his body continued to explode, causing wave after wave of damage to him. The deadliest part was the paralyzing effect of the lightning. It could stop the circulation of his battle energy. Hence, the space domain that he had just activated did not last for 3 seconds. The spectators did not know what had happened. Carlotte had just activated the space domain, but in less than 2 breaths, he screamed in pain and fell to the arena. Even the space domain had been destroyed, but it was far from over. Carlotte looked like an assassin. He had been forced to do so, but he was a martial artist. He had more stamina than William, so he was not that easy to kill. At most, he could not take a beating. When he landed on the ground, he disappeared from the center of the battlefield. In the next second, hundreds of afterimages appeared in front of William. Eye of Truth. William laughed coldly. He caught the real body among the hundreds of afterimages and punched out. The Thunder Fist instantly enlarged by tens of meters. Bang! Carlotte could not believe that he had been hit again, but his body flew back thousands of meters like a cannonball. He crashed heavily on the arena and rolled for tens of meters. In the next moment, dawn impact. The spectators saw William transform into a ray of light. He stuck close to the ground and crashed toward Carlotte. But they did not know if William was stubborn, or if the space barrier was strong enough. Carlotte stood up and raised his hand to set up tens of space barriers. A series of loud bangs could be heard. William stopped using his skill. His forehead was bleeding profusely. It was so painful that he wanted to take off his helmet and rub his head. The corners of his mouth twitched. What a shameless person. But Carlotte did not care. When he saw that William had paused, he used his killer move again. Infinite space cracks. It cannot be helped. He was a martial artist. The spatial rift was basically the only long-range operation he could use. But he did not believe that William could withstand the attacks. But then, a shocking situation occurred. William stood in his original position. He slashed with his sword and grabbed with his hands. Not only did he withstand wave after wave of space cracks, but he was also pushing forward. His body was so flabby that it was as if there was an endless flow of blood in his body. Carlotte could not enter the space tunnel anymore. Ever since his space domain was interrupted, he had used up a lot of energy. The space fluctuations on the battlefield were too intense. He was afraid that he would not be able to return if he entered. Therefore, Carlotte gritted his teeth and continued to create space cracks. He wanted to crush William to death. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. William could use his sword to slash a few space cracks and grab a few more with his hands. But now it was too late. He did not care anymore. No matter how much blood flowed, it would not be as fast as his recovery. He was like a raging rhinoceros as he charged at Carlotte. Carlotte teleported again. Hand of Soul. Bang. William's technique was destroyed in one move. But the most unexpected thing happened. Carlotte had actually appeared behind him at this moment. His hands are like spatial blades, instantly piercing through his elemental armor and stabbing into his waist. Carlotte had even squeezed 2 of his kidneys. Intense pain. It was indescribable pain. William's health points dropped rapidly. But just as Carlotte retracted his hands, because he had squeezed 2 kidneys, he was reflected by the lightning. Chi, chi, chi. Carlotte was paralyzed by the lightning. His body trembled continuously. Less than half a second had passed. But William, who had seized the opportunity, did not care about this. He pulled back his hand and grabbed it, bringing it in front of him. In an instant, he crushed the bones in its 2 arms. He grabbed his arms and smashed them on the ground. Pom, 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 pom. In just a few seconds, William smashed dozens of times. Even the barrier that the legendary veteran had set up on the ground was destroyed. Carlotte was smashed into a bloody mess. All the bones in his body were broken, and he was about to turn into meat paste. The referee finally acted and forcefully pulled Carlotte away from William's hands. Crack! William did not let go. Both of Carlot's arms were torn apart by the two of them. But the legendary enchanter looked at the murderous lord of the City of Dawn, who was bleeding profusely and had lost 2 kidneys. He hesitated for a while and did not dare to make a sound. He did not even ask for the arms. He took the half-dead Carlot away. Chapter 463. William seemed to have lost his kidneys, but it was not a big deal. Ahem! It was not a problem of not needing it. Even if he did not have the life potion, he could quickly recover from the injuries that did not cause him to lose his organs. But it would be worse if he lost his arms and legs. He stuffed Carlot's arms into a space ring and walked down the arena without looking back. Crown Prince Peter saw this scene and knew that he could not get them back. In fact, William had just given him 2 middle fingers, which represented 10 million gold coins for one arm. But Carlot had taken it as a mockery. Peter looked at Carlot, who was like a pile of mud. He hesitated for a while and painfully took out a few drops of life potion. Not only did he want to help Carlot recover from his injuries, but he also wanted to regrow his arms. He had no choice. After all, Carlot was Peter's subordinate. He had followed him for more than 10 years, and his combat power was top-notch. No matter how precious the life potion was, he had to use it. It was time to buy a horse's bones with 1,000 gold coins. Carlot had to pay a price. In just a few seconds, Carlot's injuries had completely recovered. Carlot's injuries were completely healed. He looked at his brand-new arms and choked with sobs as he faced Crown Prince Peter, unable to say a word. He did not know if he was beaten to tears or if he was touched. Crown Prince Peter hated Carlot's arrogant words, but he comforted him. It's fine if you lose. Train well and kill him in the future. You can go and rest. Yes, Crown Prince. Carlot nodded sorrowfully and walked to the resting room in the defeated arena. At this moment, Peter looked at the young lady beside him and asked, "What do you think?" "I'm not confident." The latter shook her head. "You're not confident either." Peter was a little disappointed. If that was the case, it would be a little troublesome. The young lady had delicate eyebrows and a slender figure. Her every move exuded an extraordinary charm. She covered her mouth and laughed. "There are many people that I'm not confident of defeating. If I rank them according to the number of victories, I can't even enter the top 10. Is that so?" Peter looked at her deeply. He did not have any lewd thoughts in his mind, but he was still deep in thought. The lady in front of him was the reincarnation of the god of day, Hermora. She belonged to the faction of the god of light. Even if she was not a lord god, her strength was still unpredictable. At least, none of his subordinates were a match for her, since Hermora said that it meant that there were many reincarnations of gods present. He secretly glanced at Paul Bane. He didn't know if this hidden chess piece could defeat William. After His Royal Highness left the stage, Caesar and the others came up to him and started another round of business flattery. Ackler had already finished his battle. He had won easily. After all, not every tank had an invincible pair of hands. Among them, Keen Angus, commonly known as the weakest Thunder Warrior, also stepped onto the stage. It had to be said, even the weakest person among them was ranked 6th in the Magic Conference. His opponent was not a fearsome person, so he easily scored point. Next, Vancet also went up to fight. Unfortunately, he was unlucky. He encountered a reincarnated deity from the Sunset Empire. After being beaten up for 5 minutes, he surrendered. Because the gap between the two was too big, there was no combat experience. At most, it would increase the experience of being beaten up. In their group, Caesar was the last to fight. His opponent was a prince of the Sunset Empire. Now that they were here, they had no choice but to mention the secret manuals that the princes and princesses were cultivating. They were highly adaptable. According to the awakened attributes, the super-secret manuals would automatically generate skills. William learned the Battle Energy secret manual called Sacred Dawn Battle Energy. Caesar learned the Lionheart Mantra. All of his skills and moves would be accompanied by the majestic aura of a lion. The secret manual passed down by the royal family of the Sunset Empire was called Sun God Technique. The secret manuals of the Sunset Empire sounded low-class, but they could greatly enhance the abilities of light element professionals. There was a rumor. It was that the founding emperor of the Sunset Empire had received the inheritance of the sun god when he was young. He had modified this technique into the sun god technique that was more suitable for his bloodline. What was more interesting was that every prince and princess of the Sunset Empire who practiced this secret manual had awakened the light element. The awakened attributes of the princes and princesses of the war-ending empire could not be controlled. But as long as the attributes were not too gentle, they would be compatible with the Lionheart mantra. Caesar was a fire element fighter. His opponent was a light element warrior. The battle between the two was like a human-shaped sun fighting against a flaming lion. The scene was extremely bloody. Both of them were not weak. The battle lasted for more than half an hour. Caesar was finally able to defeat his opponent by relying on his thick skin and flesh, as well as the fact that his body was not afraid of heat. Witnessing this scene, the commander of the empire's imperial guards, Duke Albright, who was Caesar's father-in-law, beamed with joy. He even clapped his hands and praised Caesar. As for the spectator stand of the Sunset Empire, it was silent. Death god Karl's aura was cold as usual. Elyunza, who had the title of Sunset Sword, closed his eyes and rested. He did not seem to care about the outcome of the battle. William glanced at Elyunza. He was also a half-elf. The first batch of half-elves appeared at the end of the Second Era. William vaguely remembered. He seemed to have the bloodline of a human legendary expert in the elven royal family. William had mentioned it before. At the end of the Second Era, the elves and humans had united through marriage in order to resist the dark forces. There were many heroes among the half-elves, but there were also many cowards. Elyunza was undoubtedly one of the heroes. What was more important was, after he became a sage in the later stages of the game, he also controlled half of the legions of the Sunset Empire, especially as the game continued to go on. Elyunza, the half-elf, controlled more and more power. He almost became the emperor of the Sunset Empire. At that time, even though the Sunset Emperor was a legendary expert, he was more like a puppet. The one who had the most influence was Elyunza. Logically speaking, there were 6 or 7 sages in the Sunset Empire. They would not let Elyunza, a half-elf without royal blood, fight for the throne unscrupulously. But these sages tacitly agreed. So at that time, someone said, was it possible? Was Elyunza the reincarnation of the first emperor of the Sunset Empire? After all, gods could reincarnate. It did not make sense that the founding emperor of the Sunset Empire could not reincarnate. This statement caused many people to speculate on the forum. William still felt that it was possible, because although Elyunza fought for a lot of power, he did not abolish the emperor. Instead, he made the deteriorating empire more powerful and developed in a good direction. This is a headache. This epic title ceremony has attracted too many experts. My head is about to explode. William sighed. There were too many important figures present, close to 100 of them. All of them had huge secrets in their hearts, the kind that would shock people to death if they were to reveal them. If not for his good mentality, he would have shouted them out. The battles continued. Soon, it was the third day. William and his companions began the second round of battles. This was because the number of people who had been eliminated so far had already exceeded 500. The remaining 500 people would participate in the second round of battles. In other words, out of the 1,000 or so people, only about 30 of them would be able to win 5 matches in a row and obtain the epic title. But according to William's memory, only 26 people had obtained the epic title in his previous life. He did not know what would happen in this life. In these 3 arenas, he saw the 3 reincarnations of the thunder god, Thor, and the other gods. They were powerful and terrifying. No matter who it was, they were weak in front of them. A battle was a one-sided beating that was as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. If the great enchanters had not reacted quickly, some people would have been killed. And now, he was facing another opponent. He was a freelance mercenary from the Frost Empire. He was tall and had a height of 6 meters. He was like a giant. When Akarov saw this guy, he could not help but say, "This guy seems to be a legendary figure of the Frost Empire." That That seems to be the case. Caesar nodded thoughtfully. William's mouth twitched. He did not care about the two gossiping fellows. When the two of them stepped onto the arena, William had to tilt his head to see his opponent's face. This gigantic man with arms that could run horses did not make a move immediately. Instead, he said in a muffled voice, "Hello, my name is Meng Lu." "Hello, I'm William Blackleaf. I know you, Lord of the City of Dawn. Your City of Dawn is very good. The Frost Empire welcomes you to join the battle in the extreme north." After Meng Lu finished speaking, his body emitted cold air. He clenched his fists so hard that they made cracking sounds. But he did not attack. He seemed to be waiting for William to make the first move. William's mouth twitched. This guy was his least favorite opponent. Because his skin was too thick, he could not defeat him. He did not need to think. He suspected that this guy had a similar defense value as him. Was he boasting? When some of the epic professionals saw Meng Lu, they could not help but talk about him. This guy called Meng Lu was only an epic professional, but there were many strange rumors about him. Most of them were about his height. Among them, the most authentic was that his mother was also a guru-level adventurer. She had entered the Frost Forest to hunt magical beasts and disappeared. She had only returned after a year. When she returned to the human world, she was carrying a child called Meng Lu in her arms. His face looked like a newborn baby, but the length of his arms and legs was more like that of a 3- or 4-year-old child. The most important thing was this guy called Meng Lu had some characteristics of the Frost Giants. Many people suspected that Meng Lu had the bloodline of the Frost Giants. William had seen the Frost Giants before, but he was a little puzzled. A 7 or 8 meter tall giant and a human female. How could they have a child together? "If you gossip about my mother again, you will get lost in the arena." Meng Lu glanced at the gossiping fellows around him. The arena was dead silent, because at that moment, the muscles on Meng Lu's body swelled again, and his height increased to more than 3 meters. He looked like a god. Bang! There was an explosion. He charged at William like a rampaging rhinoceros. William cursed in his heart. They were gossiping about him. Why were you angry at me? But when he saw the aggressive Meng Lu, he took half a step back with his left foot. Then he punched Meng Lu. Boom! Shock waves surged. William retreated tens of meters. But the muscular man did not retreat at all. But the bloodstains on his fist were very obvious. But Meng Lu was too tanky. He clenched his fist and felt the pain. But he did not retreat. Instead, he became more and more excited. That was right. He was a berserk-type fighter. The more he fought, the stronger he became. William was not convinced. He did not believe that as an excellent ranger, he could not defeat a berserk-type fighter. Thus, when Meng Lu charged at him, he immediately used Dawn Strike. A bolt of blue lightning collided with the snow-white giant. Shockwaves spread out for hundreds of meters with both of them as the epicenter. William, who had used Dawn Strike, only managed to make Meng Lu stumble. Meng Lu reacted quickly. He did not wait for William to retreat. He grabbed both of William's hands. The big hand held the small hand. William's fists could not open, especially when he realized Meng Lu was about to tear off both of his arms. This was an unimaginable force. It was as if he was wrestling with a giant dragon. William could not help but inhale a mouthful of cold air. He stomped his feet on the ground and shot into the sky like a cannonball. But Meng Lu did not let go of his arms. No matter how much William stomped on his chest, Meng Lu did not feel anything. However, buzz, buzz, buzz. 2 bolts of lightning shot out from William's eyes and reflected on Meng Lu's face. Both of them finally had time to separate. But at this moment, William had nowhere to retreat. Ice walls appeared out of thin air, blocking his path of retreat. Meng Lu looked silly, but his battle awareness was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. He knew that William's 2 arms were his greatest threat, but with his great strength, they were also his weaknesses. But William was not to be trifled with. He used the Thunderfinger. A substantial electric current hit Meng Lu's chest. But a surprising situation occurred. His upgraded Lightning God Ring was actually only able to cut through his skin. It did not even pierce through his flesh. Bang! A punch. William's head suffered a heavy blow. It was as if he had been hit by the tail of a giant dragon. He became dizzy, and his body shot through several ice walls like a cannonball before crashing heavily on the ground. The moment he opened his eyes, Meng Lu was like a black shadow in the sky that was about to hit him. Thunder slash. William was enraged. He slashed his sword at the sky. The hundreds of meters long sword radiance shone in the sky. But Meng Lu used his arms to block the slash. His white bones were exposed in the air. He wanted to tear off William's arms, but it was only for a moment. It was enough for William to distance himself from Meng Lu. Many people were celebrating that the Lord of the City of Dawn had met his nemesis. William shook his head and sighed. He looked deeply at Meng Lu and said, "It's not that I don't want to fight you in close combat, but sorry, I'm a ranger." Hence, he took out the lightning bow that he had kept for many years. He could not defeat William in close combat. William was too tanky and had too much strength. He was completely restrained. Chapter 464. Everyone knew that William was a ranger, but it was rare to see him use a bow and arrow. Everyone thought that he had switched to the wrong occupation, but when he took out the lightning bow, he truly displayed the basic qualities that a ranger should have. He shot quickly. He shot accurately. He shot ferociously. Meng Lu was a berserker type of fighter. He had amazing defense and explosive power. His huge body did not restrict his speed. As long as it was not a long-distance attack, the fighter could say arrogantly, "Our short-distance charge is not inferior to others." Furthermore, he is an ice-type professional who can use his domain to restrict the enemy's speed. But William had the thunder domain. Both of them activated their domains at the same time. It was at that moment. The shockwave of ice and lightning collided. In the next second, the thunder domain and the ice domain intertwined. Strong winds howled. The electric fans roared. The arena within a radius of thousands of meters froze. Bolts of lightning, accompanied by the sound of thunder, struck the frozen ground. The collision of the domains was like the end of the world. If a Grandmaster professional were to stay here, there would be no chance of survival. More importantly, the various buffs brought by the thunder domain did not slow down William's speed. Seeing this, Akarov could not help but raise his eyebrows. William may not be able to fight in close combat, but he's indeed a ranger. Caesar nodded in disbelief. William's archery was quite accurate. He had thought that the lightning bow was just a decoration. Because William had once again demonstrated his tyrannical control over the hundred-eyed giant. Everyone could see his afterimages all over the arena. Lightning flowed within a radius of tens of thousands of meters. Lightning arrows were shot at Meng Lu from all directions. Swoosh, 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 sounds were heard. In just 10 seconds, Meng Lu's body was covered with arrows. There were hundreds of arrows. William did not miss a single arrow. This was enough to prove his identity as an epic ranger. At this moment, Meng Lu had turned into a porcupine. Not only was his armor in tatters, but he had also lost over half of his HP. He was in a miserable state, but William was feeling a little uncomfortable. Meng Lu's endowment was very impressive. Besides being able to negate 5,000 points of damage, he was also immune to all kinds of true damage. In short, he had a lot of damage reduction skills. He couldn't even numb or stiffen his body. How unbearable! If he had shot this arrow at someone else, it would have cost at least 7,000 or 8,000. But when it came to him, he only had 2,000 or 3,000 left. Meng Lu's eyes were filled with anger. He couldn't help but roar. "Are you a man or not? Come down and fight me with your fists." "Sorry, according to my biological structure, I'm still a blue child." William shook his head. Meng Lu looked silly, but he couldn't be deceived by his face. This was because people with mental problems often had high combat strength and battle awareness. At this moment, when Meng Lu saw the enemy pause for a moment, he charged forward again. The moment he bounced up from the ground, a sonic boom and a sound barrier appeared at the same time, and a long tail appeared behind him. Just as William was about to dodge, the ground beneath his feet seemed to have been frozen by ice. F***CK. Silver coins. I knew you were trying to trick me by talking to me. William's eyes turned cold. He only paused for half a second, but he was surrounded by ice walls, or rather, an ice house that trapped him. William was slightly shocked. and he retreated rapidly. But when his back crashed through the ice wall, Meng Lu also crashed through the ice wall in front of him. Taking advantage of William's momentary pause, Meng Lu punched with countless cold air currents. William looked at the fist hitting his face. His eyes instantly turned silvery white. It was a soul shock wave. The soul shock wave of an enchanter was visible to the naked eye. Countless ice shards were sent flying. Even Meng Lu, who was close to William, was sent flying into the air. Half of his soul almost flew out of his body. Then, he continued to kite Meng Lu. Meng Lu was so angry that he kept shouting. Just like how William had dealt with Carlotte, he attacked left and right. Every time he punched, he would let out a furious roar. Until now, this was the third time Meng Lu had gotten close to William. It was a pity. William wasn't completely helpless in close combat. Out of these 3 opportunities, if the Grandmaster of Combat managed to catch the Ranger would definitely be beaten up. But it was a pity. William wasn't a traditional Ranger. He was a close combat Ranger and a soul enchanter. The battle between the two of them dragged on for 20 minutes. But it couldn't be helped. Meng Lu was too tanky, and he had various recovery skills. There were a few times when William was about to shoot Meng Lu to death. Even the great enchanter was prepared to save him. But accompanied by his furious roars, Meng Lu's health points increased again. It was as if he was a super scion. The more he fought, the stronger he became. But after he used his recovery skills a few times, his speed and strength were greatly reduced. Obviously, there were many limitations to his recovery skills. In the end, he could only become a target. Swoosh! Poof! Meng Lu didn't even dodge. He allowed the arrow to hit his forehead. His eyes were filled with unwillingness. He stared at William. Even if he was shot to death, he wouldn't admit defeat. William frowned. He looked at Meng Lu, whose health points were less than 3%. He couldn't help but say, "Don't force yourself. Even the great enchanter can't tell that you're about to die." The great enchanter couldn't help but curse. He wasn't a life or death magician. How could his judgment be so accurate? If Meng Lu was about to die, the Warlock Saint would definitely intervene. Why was William talking about him? "I'm not convinced," Meng Lu replied in a muffled voice. William raised his eyebrows. "I don't want to kill you. Just one punch. Just one punch. If you can push me back, I'll admit defeat." Meng Lu was still angry. But while they were chatting, Meng Lu's health points continued to increase. William felt that this was a conspiracy. Meng Lu looked silly, but he always used the chatting method to trick William. Meng Lu was very strong, but he had a different kind of stubbornness. William was a freelance mercenary who wasn't bound by any power. If he dealt with this simpleton, if he defeated him in his area of expertise, he might be able to subdue him. Prince William said in a low voice, "According to logic, this is a life and death battle. It's understandable for me to defeat you in any way. Am I right?" Meng Lu pondered for 3 seconds, but he still muttered, "You're right, but this isn't a battle between real men." This sounds familiar. William raised his eyebrows. The Tauren FIU Roser had said the same thing to him, but FIU Roser had wanted to arm wrestle with him. Then Meng Lu looked at the northern sky and said, I bid farewell to my mother and came here to fight, but I'm going to be eliminated after just 1 round. I'm upset. Fight me with your fists. Let's have a real fight. I believe that you have the ability." When William saw that Meng Lu's health points had reached 23%, he said in a low voice, "Okay, just 1 punch. I'm not going to use my fists because I'm afraid that I'll kill you." Meng Lu tore apart the shattered armor on his body. He hammered his bleeding chest and shouted, "Come, use your fist to penetrate my chest." Hence, their speed suddenly exploded. They were so fast that they traversed through space and arrived at the center of the battlefield. Bang! Fist against fist. The moment the 2 fists collided, a loud sound rang out. The arena collapsed with a loud rumble. The floor within a radius of a few hundred meters shattered like a spiderweb. The great enchanter did not look good. He was going to be scolded again. But the shockwaves from their fight had reached the threshold of a legendary level. He cannot be blamed for this. The audience watched anxiously. The shockwaves dissipated. William stood at his original position. His right hand was fine, but his right arm was fractured. His internal organs were filled with cold air. It was as if he had been hit by the frost silkpalm. He felt terrible, and his health points had dropped by 19%. But Meng Lu was in an even worse state. He lay on the ground and looked at the sky listlessly. Both of his arms had become a pile of mud. It was as if they had been crippled. Even though he had a beginner elemental body, he needed a long time to recover. Actually, William was only able to unleash such a powerful punch because he had relied on Thunderstrike to unleash such a powerful explosion. This was one of his ultimate skills. He did not want to reveal it so early. But in order to recruit an epic expert, William decided to let him have a taste of it. The great enchanter glanced at Meng Lu and stretched out his hand to grab him. But William grabbed his shoulder before he could grab him. He was like a person who was blocking his way. He brought Meng Lu down from the arena. When Caesar and the others saw him, William winked at them and flew to the side with Meng Lu. Meng Lu, who was 267 meters tall, did not die. After he was thrown to the ground, he forced himself to sit up. His eyes were red. I admit defeat. You're very strong. I'm going back to the northern region. I still need to train. Where are you going? The legendary continent is so big. Why do you have to go to the northern region to train? William squatted beside him. He closed his eyes and stuffed the fractured bones into his flesh, allowing them to return to their original position. He waited for them to slowly recover. Thank you for fulfilling my wish. I came here to see more experts, but this place is not suitable for me. The professionals in the northern region prefer to use their fists. Even swords and axes are fine. Meng Lu stood up and was about to leave. What do you mean? Are rangers not humans? William could not help but say, the competition has not ended. You can't leave. Meng Lu sniffled. He was speechless. He said in a muffled voice, D***MN, when I return to the northern region, I'm going to the extreme north to kill orcs. That's a good idea. I had the same intention. Why are you still a freelance mercenary? William suddenly asked. Meng Lu glanced at William and said in a deep voice, there are too many rules, and it's too troublesome. Moreover, I often have very long missions. I also have to take care of my mother. D***MN, you're taking care of a filial son. William's eyes lit up. He could not help but say, why don't you join the City of Dawn? Even if you're in the northern region, you should have heard of the benefits of the City of Dawn, right? Meng Lu frowned and looked at the ill-intentioned William. I've heard of it. The benefits are not bad, but I don't like you Southerners. You're too calculative. You're not as straightforward as the people of the northern region. William was speechless, but he still said, then after the competition, let's go to the extreme north together. I'll let you see if the warriors of the City of Dawn are straightforward. All right, but I have to bring my mother here first. She has many old injuries and many illnesses. I placed a lot of bets on myself in hopes of winning money to treat her illness. In the end, I lost all my money. Meng Lu clenched his fists. D***MN, I didn't know that I couldn't leave if I couldn't finish the competition. If I knew, I wouldn't have come. William raised his eyebrows. No wonder Meng Lu looked so poor. He had probably used all his money to treat his mother's illness. But an illness that could trouble an epic professional was probably not easy to treat. But he still said, if you trust me, tell me where your mother is. I'll arrange for someone to bring her to the Snow Elves' capital city. There will be someone to take care of her. Isn't the competition ground sealed? Meng Lu's eyes widened. The second prince of Zero War, Caesar. He's my brother. It's not a problem to ask him to pass the message. Meng Lu hesitated for a while. He glanced at William's sincere, kind, pure, and beautiful eyes and said, okay, I trust you. Ding dong. Prompt. Meng Lu's affinity for you has increased by 180 points. Chapter 465. The health points did not stop, and the battles did not stop. Many contestants tried their best to defeat their opponents in order to obtain the epic title. William, Acaloro, and Caesar had successfully advanced to the fourth round. The battles in the arena were so intense that the Grand Mage had to intervene to prevent casualties. The great enchanter could no longer accurately grasp everyone's life aura. After all, seeing that they would be able to obtain the epic title after 2 more victories, the current participants were completely crazy. There was only one word to describe them: do it. However, the high-intensity battles could also attract the attention of many legendary professionals. This gave many epic professionals a chance to perform. After all, epic and legendary. The difference was like heaven and earth. Many epic professionals understood that they would not be able to break through to a higher level by themselves. They would have to rely on a legendary expert at this stage. There was no need to talk about imparting secret manuals. The key was the experience of breaking through to a higher level. This was the key. In particular, this world did not limit the number of teachers. Many people started from the weak. Maybe a legendary big shot had 7 or 8 mentors standing behind him, ranging from beginner to legendary. Caesar glanced at the defeated King Angus, Cassidon, and the others. He sighed and looked at William and Acaloro. Out of the people I arranged, only the 3 of us are left. Peter has 4 people left. Hermela is very strong. He might be an epic title. The rest is up to you. Try your best to rank at the top or become an epic title expert. Then I can surpass him and let my father take a look at me. Isn't Thor considered a human? William laughed. Caesar was speechless. How could he not understand the meaning behind William's words? But he still explained, he is the representative of the Empire's Battle Energy College that supports me. He can represent the Empire's Battle Energy College and the Empire, but he can't represent me. Don't worry. As long as we don't encounter those 3 perverts, I'm confident of becoming an epic title expert. I think William can do the same. But I think Thor has a chance of being in the top 3. Acaloro was a little jealous when he spoke. In particular, Acaloro had fought with Thor before. Thor had almost cried out for his father. It was a tragic sight. He did not want to recall that past. Moreover, everyone could see that the superseded player of the 3 empires, the lightning-type, domain-type warrior of the war-ending empire, Thor, was one of the 3 empires. Sunset Empire's metal-type warrior, martial artist Alos. Crass, an earth element warrior of the Frost Empire. As long as the 3 of them went on stage, they would easily defeat their opponents. In their battles, no matter how strong their opponents were, they would be defeated in less than 5 minutes. His strength was far beyond that of other peak epic professions. This kind of strength was completely despairing. No matter who was picked to fight them, they couldn't help but want to admit defeat. Actually, William was also silently praying that he wouldn't encounter these 3 reincarnations. Otherwise, he would definitely be beaten so badly that even his mother wouldn't be able to recognize him. He didn't know if his words were true or not. Either that, or the goddess of luck would lift her skirt that did not have any holy light on it. When his and Paul Bane's names appeared on the water screen, the prince's eyes lit up. On the other hand, Caesar Gigot heaved a sigh of relief. He said via voice transmission, I thought that the warlock saint didn't want to talk to me at all. I didn't expect him to make arrangements for you. William nodded. When he felt someone looking at him, he also looked at Paul Bane. There were real, electric sparks between their eyes. Before they went on stage, their eyes had already emitted electric sparks. They even touched each other. When the great enchanter saw this scene, he didn't care about the confrontation between them. In the eastern region, everyone knew that the Lord of the City of Dawn and Paul Bane had a conflict because of the Beast Citadel. Many people were pleasantly surprised, because the confrontation between the 2 of them could even determine the final ownership of the Beast Citadel. William stepped onto the arena, and Paul Bane didn't lag behind. Paul Bane was expressionless. Before the barrier rose, he had already taken out his thunder/sword. Thor sniffed. He had seen William use his sword many times. Every time he used his sword, he felt very uncomfortable. Alos and Crass even winked at him, as if to say, Yo, brother, your grave has been dug up. Aren't you going to kill someone? What's with this guy's left and right arms? This aura doesn't feel right. Not only was his grave dug up, but his corpse was also stolen. Of course, in the eyes of others, this could only be seen as a provocation between top experts. However, Thor was still a little angry. But when he glanced at the long-legged Ariel beside him, his mood instantly improved. Ariel, the Thunder Enchanter of the Battle Energy Academy, one of his mentors, his future colleague. In his future, the two academies under the direct control of the war-ending empire both had magicians and chi practitioners, and there were quite a few of them. It was just that their focus was different. Ariel sensed Thor's gaze and didn't look at William's handsome face. After all, no matter how handsome William was, he was not a man she could have. So, she held Thor's arm and sweetly said, "What's wrong? I feel like you're drunk." Thor's lips twitched. "No." He pulled his arm out and said, "Minter, there are many people here. Many legendary experts are watching. Let's be careful." Ariel pouted. "You call me Minter now, but you don't call me sweetie. Besides, mentors and students can fall in love. Moreover, you become a realm warrior. The academy is going to let you be a mentor." As she spoke, Ariel couldn't help but carefully size up Thor. "Why didn't I know that you were always struck by lightning? It turns out that you're too talented. When I first taught you thunder magic, I realized that you always looked at my legs. Did you have designs on me then?" Thor coughed softly. He glanced at Ariel's flat airport and looked up at the sky. "Who knows?" In the arena, William glanced at Runshin Thor, who was in a teacher-student relationship. He cursed in his heart. Heterosexuals would die sooner or later. Then he heard Paul Baines say, "I'm asking you, do you want to bet? You guys who like war like to be gamblers, right?" William retreated in order to advance. This guy wanted to use this battle to bet on the ownership of the Beast Castle. Naturally, William couldn't agree directly. Even if he thought he would win, he couldn't come up with a bargaining chip of equal value. At this moment, the reincarnation of the Sunset Empire's god of war, Aloys, looked at Paul Bane. He sighed and shook his head. "Similar, too similar. Similar? Who's similar?" Someone beside him asked. Aloys shook his head and didn't speak. He had watched 3 battles of Paul Bane. His actions, even words and arrogance were very similar to his younger self. After some investigation, he found out that Paul Bane had established a large mercenary team throughout the eastern region. He had fought everywhere and suffered defeats, but he had never failed in the same place and the same tactic twice. He was simply a copy of himself. But if he showed off too much, it would be easy to break. If he encountered a disaster and didn't return to the peak again, he might not be able to recover. Aloys wasn't surprised by this. He was once the god of war and the main god. He also knew the rules of this world. The 4th era was different from the past. After 3 more eras, there would eventually be someone to replace the fallen divine spirits and vanished divine seeds. Or rather, there had to be a super saint or a main god to stabilize the rules. That was why there were people like this. He had given up the god of war position, but under the control of the heavens, someone would take that path and take his place. But Aloys narrowed his eyes. "But in the future, we can scare him and try to make him go higher. Otherwise, in future battles, there won't be a worthy opponent. It'll be really boring, right? We'll wait until he becomes a god before killing him. That's the best outcome for him. God of war position?" Since Aloys had already made up his mind to give up, he naturally wouldn't ask for it again. Or rather, he wouldn't take the path of becoming a god through faith. Whether it was super saints or main gods, only one person could stand in that position. No one knew which was better, the divine path or the divine path. It was a gamble by the gods. But there were already people on the divine path who were comparable to super saints. This meant that the divine path had potential or even higher. This was enough to prove that their reincarnation was worth it. Paul Bane seemed to be provoked by William's words. He clenched his fist and said in a deep voice, "All right, since you don't want to gamble, I'll defeat you first. Then, I'll destroy your beast castle. Don't blame me for not giving you a chance." William raised his eyebrows and sneered. "You're so confident. You're not a son. I'm going to take revenge for Cannel. D*MN. I've said that I didn't steal the body of natural God." Paul roared angrily, and his speed suddenly increased. His sandbag-sized fist, accompanied by the power of thunder and fire, smashed towards William. William's gaze sharpened. Paul Bane was very fast, but was not wrong. Paul Bane had the dual attributes of thunder and fire, and he had the ability to increase his speed. Paul Bane's speed might be faster than William's, and it would be difficult to deal with him. who said that Paul Bain wasn't strong at the epic level, and that he was only strong at the legendary level. Stretch your head out. I'll give you a slash. William barely dodged the punch, and the thunder slash swept across like a full moon. The area within a radius of a few hundred meters was instantly filled with electric arcs. Paul Bain's reaction was not slow. He bent down to dodge the attack, and his legs moved as though they were electric motors. He executed a set of Foshan shadowless kicks. William once again dodged Paul Bain's attack. He felt a burning pain in his chest that had been kicked. Paul Bain's thunder attribute could not deal much damage to William, but William could not completely avoid the fire damage. At this moment, Paul Bain continued to attack. In the midst of the battle, he suddenly pulled out a blue and red spear and pierced William's chest in an instant. Get lost. William's expression was ferocious. He looked at Paul Bain, who wanted to attack him. William reacted quickly and slashed at Paul Bain. Paul Bain's expression was cold. He raised his arm and blocked the slash. But before Paul Bain could inflict more serious injuries, William took the initiative to step forward. He ignored the spear that had pierced through his chest and punched Paul Bain's face. Bang! Thunder energy exploded, and electric arcs swept across the battlefield. Paul Bain grabbed his spear and retreated a few hundred meters. His skull was fractured, and both of his eyes were bloodshot. But William's chest also had a hole that could be seen from the other side. Their probing had ended. The battle had just begun,